Yep, recording now.
Yep, we're on the air.
Thank you. Well, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. This is the November 10, 2020 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for the Town of Fairfield. We have the first item on our agenda. Feedback.
I just needed that person.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. First item on our agenda is the meeting minutes from October 27. I do see that there are quite a few folks here. We do have a public hearing on for two items after we get through the business. So the first item is meeting minutes from October 27, 2020. And thank you. Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis. Second by Commissioner Brayman. Thank you. Everybody's so small tonight. I reviewed. I didn't see any corrections. Commissioner Francis, Brayman, see any corrections? No? Anyone else have any other comments? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the minutes are adopted unanimously. Next is old business. We have four items. First two are related. 2A and B. The zoning regulation amendment application of 131 Beach Road LLC to amend section 5.1.4 of the zoning regulations of the town of Fairfield. And item 2B, 131 Beach Road zoning compliance application of 131 Beach Road LLC pertaining to the construction of a 40-unit residential building pursuant to section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes. We had this on our at our last meeting. Mr. Wendt provided us a summary and some comments, staff comments. We tabled it for this meeting, in part on my request and others echoed, for some more time to do some more research and homework and review the record and so forth. Commissioner Noonan?
Yeah, unless you have any other introductory remarks, I had a motion to table, because I understand we have an extra few, some time, and I'd asked to move to table the item again to our next meeting.
Okay. So a motion to table by Commissioner Noonan. Do I have a second for that? Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thanks very much. Yeah, I appreciate the motion. While certainly we can talk about certain things today if we want, there are still some outstanding items that I would like to chase down and more work that I'd like to do as well. So I'm very much in favor of the motion. Commissioner Noonan or Corcoran, any other comments on that?
Nothing additional to say besides obviously just needing and wanting more time with this.
Okay.
For an application.
Great. Thanks. Mr. Wendt, what is the calculation on the time?
The expiration date would be the 17th of December, Mr. Chairman.
And our next regular meeting is on December 8th, correct?
That is correct.
Great. Okay. Any other members of the commission have any comments with respect to these two items, tabling these two items, 2A and B?
Our last one.
Sorry, Commissioner Noonan, can you repeat that?
No, I'm sorry. I just to say it's obviously our last one. We will have to be able to move forward on at the next hearing.
Right. Yes, we have to decide it before the 17th, and December 8th is our next meeting. Okay. Other comments from the commissioners? The motion on the table is to table items A and B. All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion to table carries unanimously. The next on our agenda is a regulation amendment, application of the Affordable Housing Committee to amend section 6.0 of the zoning regulations, accessory apartments. Commissioner Braun? You're on mute.
I'd like to make a motion to table that as well. I'd like to get a little bit more information about existing units that exist in town, among other things.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about that. Do I have a second for that motion? Second by Commissioner Noonan. All right. Yeah, so process, we don't have a deadline on this one at all, right? So these kinds of proposals have been being made and debated for several years. And so we're well within our rights to table this to do a little bit more work and get some more data and consider the significant comments that we received, not only during the public hearing, staff notes that were circulated. And frankly, it's not been very long in between these two hearings, and there's been a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, if anybody has any specific requests for information, please let me know, and I'm happy to get you whatever you need.
So, Commissioner Braun, what do you want to articulate specifically what your request is?
Mute.
Still on mute.
I'd like to get as accurate as possible a list of existing accessory units and their location, as well as an estimate of what we believe are unapproved or, accessory units. Because my thought is we should have some kind of an incentive for people to want to get approvals by rendering them as affordable housing, as opposed to having it be automatically approved. Also, I just think it requires a little more review before we change the reg. I need to look at the details of the wording just a little more closely. Also, a few years ago, I think the Design Commission had reviewed the possibility of changing, I wasn't there, but changing accessory units to incentivize affordable housing. I'd like to get a copy of where that was that we were looking at back then, just to see how it compares to this.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Jim Went, for the record. We can certainly provide you a list of the existing and locations of the existing accessory apartments. We have not had the discussion about incentivizing affordable units and having a mechanism for that is likely going to fall outside of the scope of the regulation. It's going to be the town administration. We have been discussing a potential opportunity to do that, which would take action by others beyond this commission. So an incentive package is likely going to live outside of the scope of the regulation. I can certainly provide you copies of the last proposal that was submitted by the Affordable Housing Committee several years ago on amending the regulations, some of which were denied, some of which were approved. The bulk of that had to do with reducing, and what the commission did do there is reduce the minimum size for an apartment from what was 600 square feet down to the current 450. But I can certainly provide you with the last version of amendments that were approved in part and denied in part several years ago.
Yeah, that would be helpful for everyone. I appreciate the request, and the listing of known units would also be helpful around town.
Yep, We can do that.
Okay. Commissioner Noonan?
As I seconded the motion, I'm happy to certainly grant the courtesy to Commissioner Braun, who feels the need to do this for the extra time. I was somewhat prepared to go forward or at least discuss. I can quickly just identify some issues that I had if the commission or the chair or the commission thinks it would be helpful to me at least show where I was looking as far as revisions. Or if you think that's for another time, I'm fine for moving on.
No, I think we can talk about issues to extent you want to get those out on the table so that people can think about them. If anybody has wants to react and discuss right now, well, no time like the present.
Okay. The revisions I had thought about were the following. For 6.3.2, amending the 1,000 square feet to higher, 1,500, to the extent, just essentially increasing what could be a floor to the size. The 40% makes sense to me, and that goes towards the size of the house. But to the extent that they could get a bigger accessory apartment, I would think that would be okay. I was thinking of removing 6.3.3. I'm not really. I don't really understand the purpose of it. I would think new construction could envision such an accessory apartment. In 6.3.6, I would consider removing the prohibition of renting for a period of less than 30 days.
Remove that.
I would, I understand the idea of preventing, Airbnbs. I think this was referenced, but in my mind, if the idea is to potentially get an extra source of income, and that being potentially a source of income, I would consider removing it. But again, nothing's set in stone. And then for 6.3.11, I would remove the in residence AAA and subsection A. So that section is not limited to the AAA residence, which I think that in the subsection A, that 2 acres would obviously go towards residence A. If these accessory units have to comply with what our current regulations are, wherever the residence is, whatever zone, whatever the type of house, so long as they meet our regulations, if they can do it, I think that we should be flexible to allow them. And in that section C, increasing 1,000 to 1,500, as I did previously. So those are that's my only thoughts. Obviously, I flew through them. Nothing's set in stone, and happy to discuss later.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it's good to get those sections out there so that folks can be thinking about that as we give further consideration to the to the amendment. I think that if we were to modify the amendment, the proposed amendment, to go outside of just, or to remove the limitation in the AAA zone, that we need to mark this up for another public hearing with the new amendment, proposed amendment. Mr. Wendt, am I correct in that?
Yeah, I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman. I know some of the other more modest changes, I think, fall within the scope of what was in the call. Just by way of some background, the detached provision to allow an accessory structure in a detached was one of the provisions that was not accepted last time. But obviously, from the public feedback we've received since then, there seems to be more acceptance to the idea of a detached accessory unit. The Affordable Housing Committee was initially just proposing it in the AAA zone, realizing that there was some pushback from that the first time, and that maybe that would be a place to start and see what the experience is in the AAA zone, and then we could always move into other zones beyond that. If you're looking to do that, if you think there's support and you're comfortable with expanding that opportunity in other zones, yeah, I think because we limited it to the provision was limited to the AAA, it probably warrants going back to further, discuss that a little more at a public hearing. I have no opposition to the idea of doing so, but I think that change warrants some additional hearing discussion.
Well, I think it's also fair notice. I mean, if the proposal was directed towards one zone, and folks in other parts of town saw that and decided not to chime in, but now an amendment proposes to make that effective, in other zones or townwide, then folks should be given an opportunity, a chance to to consider and chime in on that. That's my view.
That makes perfect sense.
I agree with this, Commissioner Brayman. I agree with that. And for preliminary purposes, I would be in favor of expanding it beyond the AAA. I don't know whether I would be in favor of expanding beyond AAA and AA, but certainly, there's room for us to debate that and to, renotice the public hearing as appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Brayman. I had Commissioner Francis first, and I see you, Commissioner Levy, Commissioner Corcoran as well. Okay, in that order, Commissioner Francis? You're on mute.
Thank you. I would support more publicity about this. I think the press has been occupied with COVID and the election, and I haven't read anything about it in the paper or on Patch, and I think people are unaware. So I would be pleased to see it discussed, and this electorate become more aware of what's being considered. And a question for Mr. Went: what entities would be creating incentives if they're not the zoning regulations?
Well, one of the things that was considered and was potentially talked about is some sort of tax abatement or relief to provide a reduction in your property tax of a certain dollar amount to incentivize the deed restriction, because in order to qualify, it has to be deed restricted. So there was some discussion about potentially doing that, but that's, again, beyond the authority of this commission. It would require, Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen and RTM approval to implement something like that. And we can relax certain
until the next sale, right? Until the large home was sold.
Well, no. Again, the objective is to try to qualify for affordable housing credit points. It has to be deed restricted for a minimum period of time, regardless of whether the property changes ownership during that period of time. So it's a little more complicated. I mean, there are provisions now. Our regulations presently can waive that so-called 5-year rule, that the no addition be made within 5 years if the unit you're creating is affordable. So we have a somewhat, a modest incentive in the reg presently to kind of overcome that 5-year hurdle, but we're looking more long-term, and that's something that's probably going to be, like I said, more of a financial incentive than anything else.
Thank you.
Who was next? Was Commissioner Levy?
Yes, perhaps in the interim, Mr. Wendt or staff could address for us or provide us some information with respect to additional detached units, what would be the implications of that in other than the AAA or AA zone. As I see, the regulations apply as well to A, R3, and R2, and I just don't know whether or not that's realistic to consider additional detached units in those particular zones. So I would appreciate more information on what that would look like.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Corcoran?
I just wanted to continue a little bit on what Meg said. The staff comments say that the regulation does not require, units to be deed restricted. When I look at 6.3.10, it seems to say that it must be in accordance with 830G. I'm wondering what I'm missing there.
That provision just outlines the criteria in order to be qualified as an affordable unit, but you're not required to be an affordable unit. You can set up an accessory apartment that's not deed restricted. To qualify as an affordable unit, you have to meet the criteria as set forth there, and I'm suggesting there's some additional criteria in 8-30G that needs to apply that's more stringent than this proposed regulation. For example, the 8-30G criteria requires that the unit be not more than 30% of the area of the house, and where our long-standing reg is allowed up to 40%. It requires an interior door between the main house in the apartment, which our regulations don't require, and it requires certain rules about you can't bill separately for utilities and a couple other things that are more strict than our current regulations. So if someone were to qualify for an affordable unit, or should we roll out an entity of the town, roll out an incentive program to qualify as an affordable unit, not only they would have to meet those stricter guidelines that are spelled out in 8-30G.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Braun?
Well, is there anything that would impede somebody who has an illegal accessory dwelling unit now from simply being legal if this regulation passes? Would that be an automatic thing?
Well, it depends on what doesn't qualify. Less than right now. This regulation proposes to eliminate a minimum floor area requirement. So if there's an existing unit that's not registered with us, I don't see an impediment for any of those units to be so qualified. Normally what happens is when a property is for sale and somebody's saying, oh, I've got an accessory apartment, and then they'll follow up with us. And if it's not signed up, and it's been an informal, because a lot of those are used for family circumstances and they've never really been rented, and now they want to market the house as, hey, you can rent the unit. That's generally when they come in and sign up, and if it meets the standards of our regs, it's an over-the-counter permit. This proposed regulation would remove some of those barriers, the biggest one being, if it's been there for less than 5 years, it would still be eligible under this proposal. Or if it were less than 450 square feet, it would still be eligible under this proposal. So I don't think it creates any barriers for anybody to get signed up.
So right now, anyone who has one that's not registered, there's no enforcement activity, right? It's just okay because they can simply register it? There's no penalty.
Most of those come on our radar screen when there's a transaction for sale and a new buyer is inquiring as to whether it's legit or not. And in most cases, when that becomes after, we're able to get them signed up and get a permit for it, because in most cases they're otherwise permitted.
Okay. I was thinking in terms of an amnesty to try to grab a few of the ones that aren't legal and incentivize people to make them legal if we could put a requirement that they satisfy the affordable housing, deed restriction, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions at the moment on this?
One more comment. This allows seniors to stay in town is one of the main purposes of this legislation. But it also, if the senior is going to live in just part of the house or in an accessory house, it brings a new family to town. So there is a flip side to it too, right?
Well, yes, from the very beginning, when the accessory apartment regulation was created, it was originally proposed to be age restricted, that you'd have to be a certain age to qualify, and through the hearing process, it was decided to eliminate the age restriction because it could also help a family that might otherwise be able to afford a house to be able to swing it if they could have, that accessory apartment income. So, yeah, if a senior downsizes from the main part of the house into an accessory apartment and then rents the main part to a family, yes, but the same would also be true if that senior decided to sell the house altogether. So it's not, yes, can it aid seniors in staying in their home? It absolutely can, but I think the broader scope is we're just trying to, create more variety of housing choice for all age spectrums, not just limited to seniors, but certainly seniors would benefit as well.
Okay. All right, so I think we haven't voted on the motion yet, right? So the motion is to table this item. Mr. Wayne, you've got a couple of follow-ups.
No, I appreciate the comments on what folks are thinking to help guide us for further discussion.
Right, okay. And so all in favor of the motion to table, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I don't see any hands. I don't hear anybody, I don't see any hands, but I also don't have everybody swear on my screen. So I'm going to assume that there are no no's. And then any abstentions? Okay, so the motion to table carries unanimously. The next item on our agenda is 1391 Black Rock Turnpike re-subdivision application of Lucas Papa George for 2 lots in a B zone.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went. For the record, the subject parcel is on the northwesterly corner of the intersection of Black Rock Turnpike and Borowski Drive. The proposal seeks to divide the parcels into 2 lots. There were variances granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals in July for lot size and square for each of these lots to reduce the lot size to 4,659 feet in lieu of the required 6,000 feet. Largely, the support from neighbors, I think, was due to the preference of constructing 2 modest single-family homes versus construction of a new 2-family home, which would otherwise be permitted. The existing house has a driveway in the Black Rock Turnpike, which is proposed to be removed, and a new driveway established on Borowski Drive. The existing concrete sidewalk and curb along the Black Rock Turnpike frontage will continue where the driveway will be removed. There is an existing concrete curb on Borowski Drive, and the applicant is seeking a waiver of requiring a concrete sidewalk along the Borowski Drive frontage of this proposal. That is all I have at this point, unless there are questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion on this?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis. Second by Commissioner Braun. Thank you. You want to start, Commissioner Francis?
I drove over and I was concerned about not having the concrete aprons and sidewalks, but no one on the street has it, so I'm comfortable with it. And a very nice neighborhood, and I think this would be a good addition, good upgrade.
Commissioner Braun? You're on mute.
I'll just repeat what Beck said in the conversation we had last time. I feel comfortable with this.
Thanks. I would like to talk about the sidewalks a little bit more. If anyone else has comments, please raise your hand. Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, I would not waive the sidewalk requirement. I think as part of our complete streets policy, it's recommended. And I think in terms of development, as each development progresses and more sidewalks are constructed, ultimately it'll accrue to the benefit of the whole town.
Thank you. Commissioner Brayman?
I agree with Commissioner Levy. I think that the complete streets policy should be adhered to unless there's a strong reason not to. And I wasn't convinced that there's a strong reason not to adhere to it here. The property is directly adjacent to on Black Rock Turnpike, which of course has sidewalks. There was at least one neighbor that asked that sidewalks be required for safety and for ease of pedestrian use. And the street, Borowski Drive, is a through street, and there was public comment about Youngstown nearby having sidewalks. So I think that this is an area where we should adhere to the complete streets policy and require, as we always have, consider ourselves the right to do, to impose the same sidewalk requirement that we generally impose here. I noted that there was an email from Laura Pooley that was introduced about a recommendation that one section of fencing be removed for sightline purposes, and I would ask that any approval of the project also include that condition.
Right. Thank you for reminding us about that. Anyone else? Commissioner Noonan?
Yeah, I would echo Commissioner Brayman and Commissioner Levy in their comments.
Okay.
That's it.
Commissioner Corcoran?
I also think that we should require the sidewalks.
Okay. I think that rounds out everyone but me. I agree. Well stated, Commissioner Levy and Commissioner Brayman. I would suggest a friendly amendment to Commissioner Francis to approve.
Sure. I love sidewalks. Yeah, I just couldn't see it.
So, for friendly amendment would be to approve with the requirement that sidewalks be installed and the removal of the section of fence as recommended by Ms. Pooley. Do you accept that?
Yes.
Great. And Commissioner Braun?
Yeah.
I thank you. Thank you. All right. So the motion's been amended. Any other comments or discussion before we vote? Okay.
I have a question for staff about the wording on his petition. Is he correct in our zoning regulation is conflicting
You're breaking up a little bit.
on this paper that he wrote?
Yeah, I heard. I think I understood your question. Yes, the applicant is correctly quoting the regulation. But
Okay.
again, having it said, the reg says what it says, but there are many cases in which this commission has required sidewalks on fronting existing streets.
No, I don't mean that. I meant his wording. That he's saying in all other districts they may require it. And in this zone you can require it, new construction, and in all other zones you can't. And this is another zone. Is he right about that?
No, this is a B zone which would require a sidewalk to be placed when building a new street. The applicant's point was the reg says you can only require sidewalks when you're building a new street. I'm not building a new street here. This is an existing street. So he's correctly quoting the regulation, but that the long-held interpretation of that in implementation of that has been requirements for sidewalks and curbs, even fronting existing streets in those zones.
Okay. All right. No, I just wondered if we had to take any action. All right. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? All right. We ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion, as amended, has been, is unanimously approved. And, that brings us to our public hearing for tonight. We have, three items, which are related, so I will call them all together. We'll hear them all together. For the members of the public that, are here, the applicant will go forward with their presentation. Then we will have a period for public comment, at which any member of the public wishes to be heard can take the mic, as it were. You can sign up for that in the chat box. On my machine, it's on the lower right-hand corner, and Ms. Harrigan will keep a list of people, and when we get to the public comment portion, we'll call people in the order that they have signed up for public comment. You don't have to sign up in the chat box. I'll make an announcement. I'll ask if anybody else wants to come in, but if you do sign up, we'll call you in the order that you sign up. And then once public comment is over, the applicant gets a rebuttal, and then when the applicant is finished with their rebuttal, the public hearing on the items will be closed. So with that, we have C1, zoning regulation amendment, application of Primrose Development LLC to amend section 10.0 of the zoning regulations for the design residence district. C2, 5545 Park Avenue, zone change application of Primrose Development LLC to establish a design residence district on land presently owned R3. And C3, 5545 Park Avenue, special permit application of Primrose Development LLC pertaining to the construction of an 80-unit residential development. Attorney Rizzio?
Chairman, members of the commission, yes. Members of the commission, I'm happy to be representing Primrose Development and Principal John Gibbs here tonight with regard to this, these three applications. What I would like to do is I'll tackle them in the order they are presented with.
Thanks. Can I interrupt you for a moment, Attorney Rizzio? I'm having a little trouble hearing you. You sound very muffled. And Ms. Harrigan, do you hear that as well?
Is that better?
Yes.
I think he's too close to his microphone.
Okay, sorry. Is that better?
I think you may just need to be a little bit further away and speak up a little bit.
Okay. All right, is that better? Oh, Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Brandon Rizzio. I'm happy to be before you tonight representing Primrose Development. This is with regard to three separate applications. As shown, a proposed text amendment change to the design residence district, section 10. A change of zone to take a property at 5545 Park Avenue and change the zone from R3 to an overlay design residence district. And then finally, a special permit application for an 80-unit apartment project made of 1 and 2 bedrooms, hopefully consistent with the regulation that we'll adopt tonight.
Thank you. Attorney Rizzio, I have to interrupt you again. I'm terribly sorry, but the audio is really challenging.
Okay, I'm going to switch with Chris Ritzel into a different thing.
It'll literally take a minute.
I don't know why it's doing.
Ray, both you and Chris are muted at the moment because we're getting feedback. So when you're ready, you just need to unmute one of the machines.
Okay.
Sounds good, Chris.
Audio working? Can you hear better?
That's much better.
Okay. Ray will be in a second. All right, folks, unfortunately, have me back. Is that better?
Much.
Hello?
You sound great. And you got a nice haircut, too.
Unmute me.
We can hear you.
Okay, hear me now?
Yep.
All right, Chairman, members of the commission, as I said, my name is Raymond Rizzio, representing Primrose Development with regard to 3 applications before you tonight. The first one being a modification to the Design Residence District Regulations, Section 10. The second being a change of zone for the property at 545 Park Avenue from R3 to a Design Residence District, an overlay Design Residence District. And finally, a special permit. I'd like to ask that all these comments be incorporated into each of the applications. And I'll start first, try and take these things in order, because as we know, when we talk about regulation changes, they should be treated generally. So there are very specific properties, certain properties in town that are very unique. I've had the opportunity to work on a few of them. One of them being 333 Uncle Road, which I think will end up being a very successful project. It's actually a very similar piece of property, very long in length, very unique to the site, something that is not just traditional, conventional zoning. This property at 5545 Park Avenue is probably about 600 feet in length, 2.5 acres. No real abutting neighbors but the Bridgeport Diocese and the Mayor Parkway. Sitting on Park Avenue across the street from a 200,000 square foot medical center and just around the corner from the playing fields at Sacred Heart and the Sacred Heart Business School. The property is zoned R3, and we looked at the regulations, and these properties are very unique. Originally, I came before you with the idea of putting this area into a special transit-oriented district, with the idea being, and it's funny what COVID has done to things in the last year, the people didn't really think of being near a parkway as being transit-oriented. But it's funny, as I go by the train station every day, you have to count more than 50 cars in the train station, and the traffic continues to build on the Merritt Parkway. You can see the people are returning back to driving. So access to the Merritt Parkway, access to I-95, once again, is very important. I hope the trains, people will return to the trains once the vaccine's in place. But in the meantime, most people are in their cars. So we looked at along the Merritt Parkway. We thought that would be an excellent area for a design residence district. And what we'd like to say, we're trying to ask you to adopt the proposed language 10.6.14 in your design residence district. Said when there are properties that contain at least 2 acres of land and are within 150 feet of an entrance exit ramp to the Merritt Parkway, that the maximum allowable dwelling density shall be 50 bedrooms per acre, maximum residential unit count of 90, no more than 2 bedrooms. One thing that we thought was important to add, as the commission has been besieged by 8-30G applications, and we were trying to avoid on this piece, the owners have been very patient in allowing us to try and work this through in what we would consider hopefully a zoning compliant way versus coming in with an 8-30G application. One of the things that we thought was important Jan Reber unfortunately has moved out of town, which may have made our meetings a little bit shorter, but we talked to Jan originally about this, and one of the things we would like to do is increase currently on any unit, any project with more than 10 units, the affordable component needs to only be 10%. We would like to say with regard to these units that we would go up to a 15% dwelling units, which I think is probably something you're consider going forward in your master plan. And that would be consistent with the same requirements, meaning 80% of the median household income. We also added section 10.9 that said all dwelling units can be contained within a single building. As you'll see as we go down the road, later in our application, the commission has been sensitive to long structures when you have these long And one of the things that as you'll see in the special permit application, this building has been broken up, although it still is technically one building, the building has been broken up. We also state that except in developments qualifying under this section 10, new 10.6.14, that the height shall not exceed 50 feet. The problem with our difficulty in some of our zoning regulations, when you have parcels that have sloped properties and we're measuring height from average grade, it's very difficult to keep height to have the appropriate height. We thought that the commission, through a special permit process, can require a building that's too high, but we thought that 50 feet, when you consider that you typically would have 4 stories of residential, some of these you have garages under. When you start adding, basically what amounts to about 10 per floor, we believe that everything could be accomplished within 50 feet. Everything else with regard to building coverage and bulk would be the same. And then we also wanted to state that under section 10 there's an addition to section 10.12 where we state that properties qualifying under 10.6.14, the new, in effect, area that we're designating, the aggregate lot coverage shall not exceed 50% of the average building and structure coverage shall not exceed 50% of the parcel, and the floor shall not exceed 100% of the lot area. This is kind of consistent with your other so-called mixed in areas which have required, with the other zones which you've had as mixed use or higher density zones. Finally, we added to section 10.14 a requirement, since we're limited to 1 and 2 bedroom units, as this commission has found, we would like to have the parking be at 1.5 spaces per unit, along with 10% visitor parking spaces. That is the change, which there's proposed text amendments which we have submitted. I assume you're looking at the same thing I am, which was they were all redlined or highlighted for you as to the changes that we made to section 10 of the design residence regulations. We believe this is very important where you have these unique parcels, trying to tailor zoning that would be complementary to the uses that surround the neighborhoods, complementary to, without having to basically disregard your regulations and come in with an 8-30G application. So we are in the mode of trying to cooperatively work with the town to give a project that we think fits in 100% with the neighborhood with which it belongs and with which is very useful. That is a main corridor. It's on the outskirts of Fairfield. Across the street is Trumbull. A little bit across the street and maybe 50 feet down the street is Bridgeport. And then the balance of Park Avenue is mostly occupied by Sacred Heart University. We believe projects such as this, if this regulation's approved, will allow people who commute, people who work in the largest employer, for example, at Sacred Heart. This regulation will not in any way become a backdoor for Sacred Heart for kind of dormitories. If you look at all student housing, almost all student housing, to be economical, works in suites, 3 to 4 bedroom suites. This has we have built in a restriction of no more than 1 or 2 bedroom units. So you don't have, the town wouldn't have to worry of families moving in, nor groups of students moving into a building that may be built under this regulation. We thought that was very important. And that's really the regulation. We looked at basically your other specific zones that you've kind of given, where you have, they're near transit, they're near either a highway or they're near a train station. For example, the Commerce Park area, where you once again have 50 bedrooms per acre. You have a large amount of, mixed kind of uses in the area. You have this project on Uncle Road, which is between condominiums close to the town, which is also 50 bedrooms per acre with no more than 90 units, similar sized properties. But once again, near a train station, near downtown,
town, unique pieces of property. And then, and so we thought that this was the appropriate density for the site. This property does not abut any single-family homes. The property at 5545 Park Avenue to the north is bounded by Merritt Parkway. To the south is bounded by basically Notre Dame High School, owned by the Bridgeport Diocese. And then ordered to the west, on the rear, also property of the Bridgeport Diocese. I will get into later that I have met with the only, I believe, parcel that can even see this, would maybe be able to even see this site. The property owners at 335 Weeping Willow. I had tried to meet with the property owner to go through our project, and the house got sold in the middle of our application. Not even the middle, a couple of weeks ago. So I've since met with the property owners. I've told them I will go through our complete presentation tonight and then probably request a continuance at the end of the night so that we can give them the, because they just found out about this. I walked the property with them and told them we would give them whatever buffering, landscaping, or anything that would make this palatable. But keep in mind, and I'll take you through and show you that their property sits about a football field away. There's about a football field in between the building being proposed. It's over 300 feet between the building being proposed and their property line. However, as I said, we always try to take into consideration residents, whether they abut the property or not, but anybody that could be possibly impacted. So we will take that up at a later date, at a later time tonight.
Right.
What I'd like to do is now that is in effect the regulation. What's that? Yes, I'm sorry, Matt. Chairman.
That's okay. I'm trying not to interrupt, but I want to time my I believe you've come to close on your statement with respect to the regulation amendment proposal. Sure. Yes? Yes.
I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have with regard to those.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I just was hoping you could talk a little bit more about how the notion of a transit-oriented district supports the regulation amendment, how that sort of fits into the equation, and do you need that in order for this to make sense? And I'm struggling a little bit with the notion that the Merritt Parkway is could be considered, an exit off the Merritt Parkway could be considered a transit-oriented district. Typically, we think about those as being, more urban-style, dense development that is in close proximity to public transportation. A parkway, a highway, multi-lane highway is not public transportation, as you might typically think about TODs, right? We think about train, rail service, bus service, shuttle service, and the like. And so maybe you could just talk about that for a minute.
I hope I didn't confuse things. We are not seeking this to become a transit-oriented district. We are seeking an amendment to the design residence districts. What I was merely pointing out is certain characteristics that would lead in R3, that would be a zone that would be close to the Merritt Parkway, that would seem to make sense for a higher density type development, especially when surrounded by a bunch of institutional uses, the highest employer in town. There actually is a public bus route right on the corner of Jefferson Street for access to people. So we are not seeking for this to become a transit-oriented district. We are just seeking a modification of the design residence districts. In fact, that was the big rub when we came in about, 6 months, a year or so ago, was that the commission was very uncomfortable with the idea of, I guess the idea of transit-oriented districts would be to avoid cars, private cars, and to put people on public transit. But we're not here to become a transit-oriented district.
So
what I tried to do.
Yeah, just talk about why we're even talking about TODs in the context of this application. Then in your statement of intent, for example, you have a passage relating to TODs. You just mentioned it in your arguments as a basis for support here, and I just think it bears some clarification.
Yes, what I've been trying to show is there are certain properties, regardless of the zone or overlay that goes with them, that people find attractive to live at because they are near areas of transit, whether it be truck stop, a bus stop, a highway, I-95. There's areas where people will be, whether they commute, whether they're going to be near areas, where there would be more density or institutional uses. I just thought in this instance that in this design residence district in an R3 zone where we would be able to limit it because it's near a Merritt Parkway, we could also limit where you're near you don't have to be limited to being within 150 feet of the Merritt Parkway. We were trying to we were trying to make it specific as to guidelines so the commission wouldn't have to worry about these things popping all over, which has always seemed to be a concern when we do a design, when we have any kind of text amendments as to what unintended areas could these pop up. So we were trying to make it specific, and we thought tying into a state highway would be a good way to do that, because there is typically along the highways higher density zoning, higher density uses. It's not as quiet. It's more of an intense use. We're not telling you, we're not here to seek to become a transit-oriented district. What I was merely explaining to you, hopefully explaining to the commission, is there are characteristics surrounding certain areas where we believe that higher density is warranted, and because of some attractions, which may be one of the biggest, Bridgeport Hospital across the street in Yale, New Haven, across the street where you have Sacred Heart's Business School, down the street in the school where you have professors, and then we also have access to either public transportation by way of a bus, or if you need to travel down county or travel anywhere, there's immediate access to local highways, and you don't have to traverse this higher density through local neighborhoods, which Mr. Galante will discuss. So we thought that was really more of a characteristic than a district that's just based on. We don't believe the only reason that this text amendment is applicable is because it's next to a highway. We believe being next to a highway makes it attractive for a university. It makes it attractive for the largest health system in the state of Connecticut. And we believe that by having that area, that one of the ways to allow our residential density to expand would be closer to the highway, where you typically don't see single-family residential neighborhoods. For example, the property we're talking about tonight is 2.4 acres. It would be the worst place in the world to put a cul-de-sac and 3 houses. It's the perfect spot for an apartment building. The entrance to here will be at a light. It is already an area that has completely been improved. And Mr. Galante, I think, can tell you about the improvements that have been done along Park Avenue that will support this type of density. This is not some side street. This is a property that's been improved with state-of-the-art traffic lights to control the type of density that's proposed across the street and the type of intensity of traffic that exists across the street and down the street. So for all those reasons, if you're near a highway, we believe that is one of the reasons we kept it near a highway, so that we would keep it beyond the possibility of this being expanded into the back area of your local residential neighborhoods. Does that make sense? I mean, we're not calling it a transit-oriented district, but certainly an attraction to this property, a limitation of this text amendment would be that you need to be near a highway entrance, Merritt Parkway entrance, where there already is, where there already is basically a lot of commercial traffic. It's not what you would certainly call a nice, quaint residential street where you would not like to see an apartment building.
Okay. Very good.
Jump in with a question.
So I see Commissioner Noonan, and then Corcoran, and Commissioner Braun. Commissioner Noonan?
Thank you. With respect to, you said earlier that one of the things you had done, Attorney Rizzio, was drafted in such a way so it was limited to specific area here at Merritt Parkway, so you don't have these popping up throughout Fairfield. The other flip side of that balance is, spot zoning. Are there other areas that this could affect? And I assume it's obviously near Merritt Parkway, so you've got 3 exits. But are there specific plots that these regulation amendments could affect, aside from the subject parcel?
Parcels. I think we discussed this previously, but I think there's parcels, but they are either controlled by the state or the town along the Jefferson Street and 59 entranceway. But it's but I believe there's a couple parcels there that are more than 2 acres. I believe there might be zoned R3, and I think we discussed it the last time this application was before you.
Okay, I think there's probably one off of 44 with that old Gardner.
Right. I don't think it's zoned R3 though.
Oh, it's not zoned R3. Okay. I mean, obviously, certainly yours made others along the Merritt.
It's funny, Commissioner Noonan, because we always go through this juggling. And I can't tell you when I haven't passed the text amendment where people think that it's a good idea for certain locations, but they don't want to be blindsided. So we have to come up with a text amendment that makes the commission feel comfortable as what they see is what they get, yet they don't get hit on the side of the head with some unintended consequence down the road. So I don't believe...
That's a tough balance for you to kind of juggle.
Yes.
In previous other application, I think it was Attorney Smith for that Beach Road had suggested that spot zoning is dead, and I'm not so sure that's too accurate, but that is a concern the commission tries to juggle with as well, is being reasonable with regulation amendments that don't affect the whole town but are not affecting just one parcel. Inappropriately made for it's reasonable. We'll determine that.
Yeah, without flexibility of zoning, you really don't leave, and I'll be sensitive as I say this, but without sensitive, flexible zoning, you don't leave people with certain larger pieces or parcels that can fit more dense zoning with any choice. But if they want to develop their property, they come in with non-compliant. They come in with an 830G application. We're trying to avoid that and come in with something that makes sense, something that mimics other areas where the commission has worked with developers and granted this type of density. And that's what I've been trying to compare the characteristics of certain sites that would really seem that this type of density should be permitted.
And that's fair. I mean, let me also be fair to the commission. I mean, we certainly have, as you said earlier, gotten several 830G applications recently. I mean, we certainly don't shy away from them. We give them all the consideration, and we certainly don't have any adverse adverse reaction to 830Gs. They are what they are, and we deal with them responsibly and reasonably. So I don't think anything needs more said about that. But I just had a separate question if you're done with this topic with me.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear. I mean, the goal of this developer is to work with the town. I mean, it could have been very easily, maybe I would have shortcut the process, and the owners probably, luckily, have been patient and just come in with 120 units, not worry about 140 units, and not tie it to anything, except that we have wetlands, WPCA, I believe the traffic and all that other stuff is. So this is a developer that's trying to give a box with which controls will still be in a special permit process that'll give the commission the input on certain, let's say, sensitive properties that really are deserving of a more intense use than the current zoning permits. It's probably the most sensitive way to say it.
Well, that's fair, but I just, I don't think, like I said, this commission in any way, sees 830G applications negatively. However the applicant wants to go forward, we're here to adjudicate that, and move forward with it.
Sure.
So, you said earlier, mentioned college dorms, and I remember seeing, an email from a public, referencing college dormitories as a potential problem to this, and I'll look at it again. But while these are not college dorms, and as you said, probably wouldn't be in today's age with, suites for college being the preferred method, obviously this is not going to be restricted in any way should a college student, graduate, undergraduate want to rent this development.
I will tell you that most developers, and having been familiar with a number of them, when they have market rate housing, try to keep college kids out, or I don't want to say college kids out. They like to an older client, more responsible clientele that doesn't lead to disruptions within a building. It's having represented developers who developed a lot of student housing. It is a very intense business. It's a very different business. It's a business that turns over every year. To make the kind of investment that the people are going to make here of $30 million, they're not looking to have kids in and out every day. This is the economics of these things is you try to get 3 to 4 to 5 years. You're not looking for college students. I think in all the developments that I have been involved with for numerous universities, private developments that have serviced college students have all been multiple bedrooms, suite types with one kitchen. It's too expensive to build a kitchen, a full 1 bedroom, and service it with what the kids can pay for college, what they would pay for college housing.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Corcoran, you had a question?
Commissioner Noonan covered my questions.
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Braun?
So can you identify, is this north of the Parkway or south of the Parkway? I'm trying to Google it, and I looked on the traffic report. That indicates it's south of the Parkway.
It's on the south side of the Parkway.
Google puts it north of the Parkway.
The western side of Park Avenue. So if you know where the large Yale Medical Facility is, and there's a Greek church next to it, there is a stoplight that in front of the medical facility. That stoplight is where the entrance to a proposed development would be at 5545 Park Avenue.
Okay, so it's bounded by, on the north by the Merrick, on the east by Park Avenue, on the south by the ball fields of Sacred Heart, and on the west by Weeping Willow Lane?
No. It's bounded by on the west, and I'm going to go to, if you want to go to the 500-foot radius map, I'll show you exactly what it is. It's bounded on the west by property of the Bridgeport Diocese. So this developer...
I think we can get to, share a screen, put up a map when you get to the parcel on the project.
Okay, yeah, so that just leads me to my next question.
I'm just answering the question, Chairman, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not being critical, Attorney. I'm not criticizing you.
So, okay, but when we were talking about this 6 months ago, it was called the Merit Transit something or other. It was a slightly similar request for a text amendment. How is that text amendment different than this? When we looked at it 6 months ago, before the pandemic, because I remember we were in an in-person hearing, it seemed like there were quite a few properties along the Merritt that would have been subject to this. And somebody from the Merritt Parkway Preservation Society came and spoke against it because it would affect, the Merritt Parkway, which is a historic highway. How is this text amendment different from that text amendment, I guess? I guess that's my question.
I don't anticipate anybody from the Merritt Parkway being here tonight. I mean, when I spoke to them after the hearing, they really did not, they more resented the fact that this was called the Merritt Parkway Transit-Oriented District. And I thought when we met with the commission, I think the commission did not really appreciate this amendment, a proposed text amendment that was something that was more based on vehicular in the same area as the downtown transit-oriented district, or the transit-oriented district on Commerce Drive. So what we did is we relabeled this as into the, and if you recall, I withdrew it because there was a real issue with regard to sticking this in. There was a feeling by the commission, and excuse me, that we were kind of bastardizing the intent of the transit-oriented district. So what we did is we moved it to the design residence zones. Yet, as I talked through with the chairman, we basically let you know there were characteristics that we thought in a design residence zone could lead to increased density. My brought up the district is I tried to show areas, talk about projects, not what they're zoned, but areas that had similar characteristics where this commission has amended their regulations to permit a certain density. That's why we tried to keep it at the 50 bedrooms per acre, tried to limit the number of units, and talk about the size.
Okay.
And just so regarding how many parcels this would apply to, when you did come here 6 months ago or so, there was another parcel. Was that adjacent? That was also near Weeping Willow, though, wasn't it? Or somewhere along that area?
Well, it's down off of Jefferson Street, but I think it's part of the. Mr. Went actually investigated it for you, and I don't remember the parcels that we discussed, but I thought it was off Jefferson Street, probably owned by the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So just Ms. Harrigan and Mr. Went, all of my videos are now cut out. All I see are names, and the service has been very choppy. Attorney Rizzio is now videos is out. I'm not sure. It's not my service because it seems to be affecting everyone. Are you seeing the same?
I am definitely seeing the same. So I don't know whether, Lenny, we can see you now. Are you having any audio issues? Were you having trouble hearing us? Because it looks as though, and there it goes. It looks as though, sometimes what happens is when the Wi-Fi signal is not so great, it cuts the video first. So hopefully everybody can hear us well.
I can still see everybody.
Oh, you can. Okay, we just can't see you. But you didn't.
I can see and hear everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. I had to
Okay.
This Commissioner Noonan, I had to switch to my phone. I think that's my problem, though.
Okay.
To the extent it helps, if I'm not coming through, my cell phone ends 3034.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Well, maybe.
You're not seeing any videos at all, Matt? Everybody's thumbnail is just a name for you?
The only one is Emmeline. Attorney Rizzio, did you turn your camera off by any chance?
No,
All right.
We can see everybody.
we can see everybody here.
So maybe then, and maybe I'll sign off and try to sign back in and see if that helps my connection. All right?
All right.
Great.
I have a question when you're next back.
While the chair is coming back on, just as a reminder, if anyone would like to speak on this public hearing item, please just send me a private message to Emmeline within the chat, and I'll put you on the list. We have 2 speakers that are already on the list for now.
Okay, I'm back in, and now I can see everybody again.
I have a question when you have a moment.
All right, everybody's back. Commissioner Francis?
All right, 2 questions for Mr. Rizzio, Attorney Rizzio. On your proposed development statement dated September 14th, on page 2, the application meets the requirements for approval, and then it goes on to talk about transit-oriented district and Fairfield Center train station and proximity to the town infrastructure. Was that whole paragraph just picked up by mistake from Uncle Road or somewhere?
I'm looking at something different. I have my narrative that I have is dated November 10th, 2020.
No, this is a September 14th one.
Yes, that's just. What is she looking at?
Got it here. There's nothing here about,
All right.
is it all right to
My one other question is, below market rate is the same thing as affordable, but you're not putting this application forward as that?
We're typically in design residence districts, when you get more than 10 years or more, there's a requirement in the design residence district to have 10% affordable. We have thought in this area that that we would increase the affordable to 15%.
Right. But you're not calling it affordable. You're not calling this an 830G application.
It's not an 830G application. If you approve our text amendments, we would have to be required to file a special permit application that has 15% affordable and be consistent with the amendments we're proposing. And we believe we've done that.
All right. And lastly, your application for amendment of zoning map or zoning regulations. Can you explain 1012? I understand the 50% of the lot coverage, but can you explain what the 100%
floor area would be? So, for example, if you have 2.5 acres, which is roughly 100,000 square feet of land,
okay,
you could put up no larger. If it was a 50% of floor area of building area, you could put up no more than a 50,000 square foot footprint. When it's 100% floor area ratio, That means no matter how many floors you build, 1, 2, or 3, you can have no more than 100,000 square feet of floor area.
Okay.
So it basically, whatever, if your lot is 2.5 acres, which is roughly 100,000 feet, you'd be entitled to build a 50,000 square foot footprint. In that footprint, you could have no more than 100,000 feet. Is that make sense?
Yes. All right. Thank you. Yep. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have now finished the amendment portion of your presentation, right? We can go into the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can go to I'm going to keep an eye on Mr. Galante. If you can put your hand up when you get, Mr. Galante has to commute to another Zoom meeting in his dining room during at 9 o'clock. So I'm just trying to keep an eye because I do want to get him to do his presentation. So I'll just do a quick overlay as to the property. Chris, if you can bring up the 500-foot radius map. So this is the property that we would like to change to have the design residence district overlay. The property is 600 feet deep by about 200 feet wide. It's got 200 feet of frontage, 600 feet of depth, and 200 feet on the top, and about 186 feet at the bottom of the property. This zone permits minimum lot area 20,000 square feet. We think that would be a tremendous underutilization of this property. What's more important, when you look at this property, you look the way it's situated, this is a property that really doesn't fit in an R3 category. It doesn't connect to anything. It's an island onto its own, surrounded by institutional uses that abuts the Merritt Parkway at a major intersection. It's the last place you'd probably if you put a road in there with a cul-de-sac, maybe it could fit 4 houses. And it would be probably the last place that people would want to put 4 houses, given all the institutional uses that surround it. Directly to the south is owned by the Bridgeport Roman Catholic Diocese. As you can see, that is also Notre Dame High School. Directly south of that is Sacred Heart University's Business School. Across the street is a 200,000 square foot Yale Medical Center. And below that is the St. Nicholas Antiochian Church. So that area, you have, believe it or not, across the street is Trumbull, directly across the street, where you see that RDR 5520. Then what you see is a dividing line between Trumbull and Bridgeport. So Trumbull's there and Bridgeport is there. Bridgeport to the south, and then Fairfield across the street where Sacred Heart parcels are in the Bridgeport Roman Catholic Diocese. There's one property that sits, as I said, a football field away from this property, across the diocesan property, which is thickly buffered, is one property at Weeping Willow Lane. Weeping Willow Lane is probably, the entrance to Weeping Willow Lane is probably a half a mile, maybe more, from the entrance to this site. This happens to be the last house on a very, very long cul-de-sac. We believe that this property should be in a design residence district, should be eligible for multifamily housing, and it would be consistent with the uses that surround it. One other thing that's important is, as we have tried to work with the town in every which way in this project, the developer has an easement from the Bridgeport Roman Catholic Diocese that would allow it to, and an approval by the WPCA that would allow Fairfield WPCA to allow this project to connect to the existing sewer line on Weeping Willow Lane. To do that, though, there is a tremendous buffer area that would have to be disturbed, basically a 20 to 30 foot swath that would run across the Bridgeport Roman Catholic Diocese property, just to the south of the property of 335 Weeping Willow, and connect to the sewer connection at Weeping Willow. That has all been approved. as we went through conservation, the town of Fairfield asked us to please see if you could avoid all of that disturbance, preserve the natural buffer between 5545 Park Avenue and the properties on Weeping Willow, and connect to the Bridgeport sewer system, which sits, there's a manhole right on the Bridgeport-Trumbull line where it connects on Park Avenue. And we have approval by the city of Bridgeport to tie into that sewer system. It will be the only property in Fairfield really tying into that system and serviced by Bridgeport. Very unique, but in a method of cooperation at the request of the town of Fairfield, we've agreed to do that and obtain that approval. So as you can see, this is probably one of the most unique properties in town. And we believe that it warrants having a zone change to a design residence district. That's all I have for that. I think it speaks for itself. If you know the site, you wouldn't even know, you're probably all driven by it hundreds of times and didn't even know it was there. And probably most people wouldn't even know if that piece of property is in Fairfield, Trumbull, or Bridgeport. So it's the perfect location for this type of development. You know, the tax probably pays $10,000 to $12,000 in taxes. From a monetary issue, you would probably end up with closer to $500,000 in taxes with no public services, no city roads, no kids in your school system. We believe this should be looked at as an opportunity for the town and not something that they begrudgingly accept. We think this is a quality project. We think the property calls for this type of development. The density is consistent with which is permitted in other so-called mixed-use unique areas in town. And that's why we believe a design residence district is appropriate for this location. I'd be happy to talk any specifics as relates to the zone change, but we think this is consistent with your master plan. We think it's on a major thoroughfare, Park Avenue, that feeds into a state highway that's surrounded by institutional uses. The perfect spot for a mixed-use project or a higher intensity project.
I have a question, Attorney Review. Have there been any discussions with any of the large employers in the area, such as the university or Young Medical Center, about the utility of having, say, workforce housing in this development for those employers or other employers?
I represent the hospital property across the street. And one of the things that we think was very difficult is finding for a lot of the nurses what's happened. That's gone from just a regular office building to, in effect, the cancer center for Yale and Fairfield County. And the way people travel, the access to the highway, the ability to attract workforce housing directly across the street is something that I know the landlord very much supports.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Commissioner Corcoran. I just have a question about the map. It shows a 500-foot radius, and when you look at the 4 properties on Weeping Willow Lane, one of them is listed twice, and I'm wondering if the real owner was actually notified.
Weeping Willow.
So to the far right, it's lot 22/86 to Thomas Gallagher. Then you come back 4 lots, and it's the same lot number with the same owner. So it looks like it's an error.
That was probably an error, but I don't think we took the mailings came from the town.
Okay.
So that was I would say that by Mr. Thomas Gallagher owned 335 Weeping Willow, and Thomas Gallagher's recently sold his house to 2 individuals who I met with today, Scott Carew and Kerry Ring. And I have met with them and have committed to meet again with them after this hearing to discuss a detailed buffering plan.
So my concern is whether the person who owns that 4th lot was notified.
It came, do you have the list of property owners? We have a list of property owners there. Hold on one second. There's,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have that list. 317 Weeping Willow was notified that that's perhaps the correct address of that fourth parcel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
No, it's the one left of it.
these four Weeping Willow addresses were 301, 317, 327, 330.
yeah, as you can see on the actual mailing list, the 335 didn't appear twice, and I think it's
We sent a
there was just a mistake, a map by Mr. Spath. So I think that what happens is, on the mailing list, what shows is 317 is really 301.
You mean the second 335 is really 301?
The west, let's call it the western one, the one that does not abut the diocesan property is 301.
Well, there are a number of them that don't.
Right.
I mean, in order.
We mailed 4 Weeping Willow properties.
We mailed to the 4 Weeping Willow properties, the Gallagher property at 335, the Weiss property at 327, the Voca property at 317, and then the Hall property at 301.
Okay. Is there a list? Is there a list of the mailing list in the record?
Yes, that's it right there, that Chris has pulled up. Oh, you can't see it, I'm sorry. Yes, there is one in the record.
Mr. Wendt, do we have it in the packet?
We have it. I don't believe it's been distributed to the commission, but it is part of the record, yes, sir.
That's fine. And you're confirming that the 4 that they just mentioned are what's on the list that you have?
That is correct. So 301, 317, 327, 335.
Yeah, okay. Very good, thank you. You satisfied, Commissioner Corcoran?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I don't see a lot of monitors, so if you have a question, please say something. I see monitors. I don't see hands, I don't hear anybody. Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, Attorney Rizzio, you could address how the density of this development compares with the comparable or similar development at 333 Umpqua in terms of number of units and bedrooms?
Mm-hmm. Yes. This actually would be less units but that's okay. Yes.
And what is
you want me to discuss it? Yeah. So the property. Did you want me to discuss that, Mr. Commissioner Levy?
Yes, in terms of what the density of each of the developments is, if you're able.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 333 Uncle Road, which is hopefully going to be ready for occupancy shortly, is 90 units and 50 bedrooms per acre. It was a cap of 90 units. That it was a balancing discussion that went on between the commissioner and the developer. 50 bedrooms per acre, I believe, is what is also in the other higher density zone, which would be, I think, along Commerce Drive is 50 units per acre. Although they do not have the limitation of 90 units because their units they've been approved for more than that. This project, as it's been reworked, actually, even though my regulation called for 90 units and no more than 90 units and 50 bedrooms per acre, this project has only 8 units and has less than the 50 bedrooms per acre. So that would, the cap in R3 would be no more than 90 units. I assume if the commission wanted to modify the regulation, we would be comfortable if you modified it down to a cap of 80 units also. Thank you. There's always a balancing act between bedrooms and units. And in my understanding that in Fairfield, when we have higher density projects, we're really not looking for more than 1 or 2 bedroom units, so that we don't end up with possible student housing or possible demand on our schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Attorney Rizzio, please, carry on.
Okay, so I'd like to move on. So what's proposed for a special permit at 5545 Park Avenue is a 80-unit, 1 and 2 bedroom apartment building with amenities such as a gym, meeting room, conference room. The project has, as I said, it's on a unique piece of property, so therefore the building is a long building. The building will have 51 bedroom units, 32 bedroom units. The property will have 158 parking spaces with basically almost two parking spaces per unit, even though we have over 50 bedrooms. The regulation which we're proposing asks for 1.5 parking spaces per unit plus 10% visitor, which is consistent with other type higher density developments in town. The building will be 47 feet high. It'll be split into basically two separate buildings with a connection. The lot is a very unusual lot, is because the grades probably shift over 20 to 30 feet from Park Avenue down to where the lower level garage will be. What I'd like to do before we get into the actual architecture layout, where John Geddes is here with us tonight to take you through, Mike Galante is here, and I'd like to have him give a presentation, because one of the things that I noticed in some of the comments coming from the Weeping Willow residents, where they were concerned about traffic. And we are very comfortable with the traffic. We believe we have the top traffic expert in town who has reviewed this. He's reviewed it at 90 units. I believe I reviewed it at 99 units, 90 now 80 units, and is very familiar with the site and can also take you through with the tremendous amount of improvements that have happened along Park Avenue, which we think even further justify a higher density residential development on this site. So, Mike, I'm going to turn this over to you so you can speed into the next room and go to Darien.
Thank you again. Mike Galante, Hardesty in Hanover. I'll spend a little bit of time presenting or summarizing the traffic report that was prepared actually for 99 units. Emily, can you bring up my slides?
Sorry. Can you see that?
No, not yet. It's a blank screen.
Oh, okay.
For Chris to bring it up?
No, I got it.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. I'm just slow.
All right.
There we go. Okay, can you see that now?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Again, Mike Galante, Hardesty in Hanover. I'll summarize the traffic report. The graphics that you see and the tables that you see in this screen tonight and the traffic report, there's nothing different in there. One table is a shorter version of it, which I'll touch on when we get to that point, which is about levels of service and so on. This shot here is the figure from the report, figure 2, which is simply a graphic or a graphic presentation of top of an aerial of the study area, the roads, and so on, and I'll touch on those. The site, as mentioned, is basically up against the Merritt Parkway. You'll see the word site right there. That's the site which has frontage on Park Avenue, and it's directly opposite the ramps, the northbound ramps for the Merritt Parkway, not the hospital, as was Mr. Rizzio mentioned before. It's at that traffic signal, so just for clarification. The traffic study included 3 intersections. One is the roundabout, which is north of the Parkway, which is for the southbound ramps, the Parkway to Park Avenue. The signalized intersection at the site frontage with the northbound ramps to the Parkway. And this site will have access to the signalized intersection something we don't see too often with some of these developments, but that's where it would be at that intersection, and the traffic that's there would be upgraded to accommodate this driveway. Continuing somewhat south on Park Avenue, the next signalized intersection on Park Avenue at the hospital driveway is included in the study area and analysis. The white circles that you see is just simply our graphic presentation as far as the number of lanes and the operational characteristics of the road itself. As mentioned before, there have been significant road improvements along Park Avenue, mostly related to the hospital development a few years ago. And at the same time, Sacred Heart was doing some development on its campus, and the improvements were pretty much analyzed by the hospital and by us, who we also represent Sacred Heart. And the mitigation plan was developed to accommodate, obviously, Sacred Heart, the hospital, and some other development up and down Park Avenue that's not on this screen, if you will. So the improvements included the roundabout at the southbound ramps, which was a preference of the Fairfield Police actually at the time. And then the signalized intersections at the northbound ramps, at our site frontage, and the hospital driveway. The lane configuration north of the parkway on Park Avenue is essentially a 2-lane road. As you get along the site frontage, it opens up to 2 and 3 and actually 4 lanes as you go through the intersections, including the hospital. And continuing down to Jefferson Street by the School of Business at the Old Town Road, Jefferson Street intersection. Park Avenue is essentially a very wide 4-lane road that was repaved and restriped and so on. And as you may recall, the signalized intersection of Jefferson and Park Avenue was improved by Sacred Heart as far as their development on the campus, which we did a few years ago. So all of these road improvements, modifications to traffic signals, installation of traffic signals, and the construction of a roundabout was the basis or the base condition as far as the traffic conditions are related to this traffic study. Emily, you can go to the next sheet. This is information from the traffic report. I just simply summarize it here to help everyone as far as going through a summary of the traffic report. The counts were done in November 2018, and your first reaction might be, well, that's a while ago. But in today's world, with the pandemic, traffic counts now, what happens with the state of Connecticut, pretty much the state of Connecticut DOT and probably every traffic engineer in the state, as well as other states that we work in, now look at traffic data. In Connecticut's view, they look at traffic data as far back as 2015 as a base condition to use as a traffic study. So our traffic counts in 2018 are still golden, they're still good, and they certainly represent traffic conditions on Park Avenue in each of these intersections from about 2 years ago, almost to the day, actually. So there was no adjustments. Those traffic volumes were obtained by us. There was traffic data compared with Connecticut DOT. I believe we compared traffic data with the hospital traffic study prepared by someone else, not us. And we used that baseline traffic condition. We identified the peak hours by intersection, and you'll see that the counts were actually done 7 to 9 in the morning on a weekday and 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on a weekday. And the reason for that was to capture the high school, the college, the university activities, and the activities related to the new hospital. And we identified the peak hours. The peak hour in the morning was identified as 7:15 to 8:15 at all of the intersections. And you'll see for the afternoon peak hour, we say peak of each intersection because it varied, quite frankly. One intersection actually showed a peak that occurred at 4 p.m. So we used the peak volumes at each intersection for the afternoon peak hour. So it's the highest volumes as far as developing the traffic baseline condition for the traffic study. Like, you can go to the next one. This figure is from the report again. It's the morning peak hour, and it shows the volumes by turning movements, and it might be a little unclear, but the data is certainly in the traffic report. It's the turning movement volumes at each of the intersections for the peak hours. There's one for the weekday morning, and there's one for the weekday afternoon. This is the basis for the traffic study as we go through the process itself. Emily, you can go to the next one. This is the afternoon sheet for the same intersections, and I'm not going to run through the numbers just yet, but the next table, which is table 1 from the traffic report, just simply summarizes the volumes at each leg or each section of road within the study area. and I'll just highlight a couple. Park Avenue near the south side of the site frontage, that's the second line down. It shows 1183 and 799. It's two-way volumes on Park Avenue. So essentially, Park Avenue has 1,200 vehicles during the morning peak hour, two-way volume, and about 800 vehicles during the afternoon peak hour, immediately south of site driveways. So that's between the northbound ramps and the Bridgeport Hospital driveway. If you look at the table to the north, to the top of the sheet, the parking section north of the Parkway and north of our site, the volumes are decreasing significantly. So the higher volumes on Park Avenue are certainly from the northbound ramps down towards Jefferson Street and Old Town Road. I won't go through all the volumes. And this just gives you a summary of the volumes for each segment of road that we use in the analysis. And then you can go to the next sheet. These graphics are simply a summary of hourly traffic volumes, and these two samples, there are other samples in the report itself, gives you the ramp volumes from the Parkway. And this one shows the northbound off-ramp, which is opposite our site, and you can see very clearly in the afternoon there's a peak, which is everyone coming home and getting off the Parkway to come back to Fairfield, Trumbull, or Bridgeport from the Parkway itself. And it shows in the morning a very low volume of traffic coming off the Parkway, which makes sense as far as commuter pattern. This is just for comparison purposes to give you an idea of the traffic patterns near the site itself. And you can go to the next one. This one is simply the on-ramp opposite the site onto the Parkway. You'll see in the morning there's a peak as far as cars are getting on, going towards Trumbull, for example. And in the afternoon, the volume of traffic getting on the Parkway to go home from whether it's Sacred Heart, the hospital, or other establishments in the area south of the Parkway itself. But this is just for reference purposes and patterns. The analyses are based on our actual traffic counts. We do look at traffic volumes from the state, and in this case, at the time, Bridgeport Hospital's traffic study for comparison purposes to make sure we were representing the traffic conditions on area roads appropriately. And you can go to the next sheet. I'm covering all the details, but I'm giving you a little bit of an abbreviated version of this so we can have a chance to answer questions and so on. This is for A, which was not in the report, because Table 4 was in the report. Table 4 in the report used the 99 units, and it showed traffic generation of 36 trips during the morning peak hour and 44 trips during the afternoon peak hour. That's total trips entering and exiting. And the highlighted is the amount of proposed 80 units, which of course reduces site traffic to 29 trips during the morning peak hour and 36 trips during the afternoon peak hour. But the analyses and all the other figures I'm going to show after this and the levels of service and so on are based on the 99 units. And Emmeline, you can go to the next sheet. This is just, again, the figures from the report. This shows the distribution. I know it's not clear, but essentially what this is we estimate and develop where site traffic will come and go to our site. Again, the site driveway is at the St. Louis intersection at the northbound ramps. So what we have is we estimate 20% of our site traffic is on the Parkway to the north, which in some ways is really east of the site. 5% to the north on Park Avenue going towards Easton. 25% on the Parkway coming from the rest of Fairfield, if you will, exit 46 and 44 and beyond, down towards Stanford and Norwalk, whatever it might be. And we show as a worst case 50% using Park Avenue to the south of the site itself. We added our site traffic, again, for the 99 units to these intersections for the morning and afternoon peak hours. And we add this traffic to what we call a no-build traffic condition. And a no-build traffic condition is a 2020 condition, but quite frankly, traffic is not growing, and if anything, it's been decreasing. It certainly decreased in March, April, May, and June, and so on, and it's certainly going back up, but it's not at the levels of what it was pre-pandemic conditions. And the state is utilizing data, as I mentioned, from before the pandemic, and those volumes are quite good as far as using volumes for analyses. The growth rate in the town of Fairfield, and this is from Connecticut DOT, is 0.6% per year. If you look at other towns, it might be 0.5, or it might be 0.4, or it might be 0.7. It varies by town. The state has a growth rate for every town in the state. I can tell you, and you all may remember before the so-called Great Recession back in 2008 and 2009 and so on, typical growth rate per year was at least 2% automatically. That simply doesn't happen anymore, and I don't think anyone expects that to happen anytime soon. So traffic volumes are lower, although they're certainly increasing, but they're not at the pre-pandemic levels. If anything, patterns have changed slightly, and we see some of the peak hours actually stretching out a little bit more because people may not be rushing to work in the morning or coming home at the typical 5, 6 o'clock at night. But our volumes are really pre-pandemic, and we assume they'll go back to that point someday. But I would not suggest it'll be next year. You can go a little bit further on the next sheet, Emma, please. This simply just shows the traffic volumes based on the distribution and the site traffic for the 99 units. And again, I'm not going to read them, but it's in the report itself. We spread the traffic out to each of the intersections morning and afternoon. And Emma, you can go to the next sheet. Table 5 here is really a portion of the table 5 in the traffic report. You know, in the past, I've shown you the entire table, which is long and wide and has lots of information. I just focus on the build results of the analyses and the change in either level of service or the increase in delay. And this is really I'll say the most important part of the table, which is a summary. Obviously, I list the intersection. We have 2 single intersections and the roundabout at the bottom. The middle intersection includes the site driveway in this build condition and all the improvements that are out there now for the last 2 years or so at least, maybe a little bit more. What the results of the analyses show, and I'll go through it briefly, level of service, A, B, C, D, F, and so on. Like in school, A is great, C is average, D is in traffic engineering, a little bit more delay. E is actually theoretical capacity, which we really don't use anymore as far as that description, and level of service F is really significant or much longer delays. And you'll see from this, all 3 intersections, including the roundabout, the levels of service are generally D or better. You see a lot of A's and B's. You don't see any D's or E's or F's. So these intersections work well. Now, we all agree, Park Avenue is a busy road, without a doubt. But there have been significant road improvements and installation of traffic signals over the last few years to accommodate the most recent developments, Sacred Heart and Bridgeport Hospital, and those improvements were built in to accommodate traffic related to those 2 developments themselves. This analysis includes the traffic from our development at 99 units, and if you go further to the right, you'll see a lot of no's. That's simply a reference that levels of service are not changing. And the next column over, which you'll see 0.2, 0.4 is the increase in delay in seconds per vehicle. So you'll see that there's really very minimal increases in delay. When you add about 35 trips to a road that may have 1,200 vehicles, the increase in delay is really not that much at all. And what this shows us from a traffic perspective is that the roads as they are today can accommodate the 35 or so trips for an 80-unit development, but this is based on 99. And there's no additional mitigation needed. The mitigation is that we will construct a driveway to our site to the single intersection at Park Avenue, opposite the northbound ramps for the Parkway. The existing traffic signal, which is a three-phase traffic signal, with the Bridgeport Hospital signalized intersection. They work together, one controller, which makes sense. So they work together, and in some way, you can say they speak to each other. The one in front of our site is a 3-phase operation. The southbound Park Avenue has an advanced green with the arrow. Then Park Avenue goes, and then the Parkway exit ramp comes off. That's coordinated with what happens at the Bridgeport Hospital driveway. It clears out traffic between Bridgeport Hospital driveway and the Parkway on-ramp, and that's all based on actual traffic volumes. And this was all analyzed actually with the Sacred Heart analyses, and of course, development was added to that at some point for this traffic study. So back to the traffic signal, we would add traffic signal heads. We would add detection, which is a video detection facing our new driveway. Our driver would have 1 lane out and 1 lane in. I believe the site plan shows a median in the middle. It will align with the ramps and the traffic signal timing. The side driveway and the off ramp would work together because our volume coming out of our driveway is very low, and it wouldn't really interfere with the off ramp in this case, really left turns coming out of the Parkway ramp itself. There's one more figure, one more table. Emmeline, if you can go to the next one. This is a table that we do in Fairfield, and it's a summary of what is the increase in traffic, total intersection traffic for each intersection. So the volumes that you see, 1198, I can hardly see it, 1198 and so on, and then the much smaller volume, 10 and 36 and 19 vehicles, again, based on 99 units. And then you'll see a percent increase at our driver, which is the highest one for 99 units. It's an increase of about 2.35%, and again, 3.23% in the afternoon. Those percentages are much lower when you reduce the traffic to the 80 units. I didn't calculate it, but this is really just to give you a feeling of what the increase in traffic would be when you add traffic for this development itself. We didn't take any credits for this site traffic. Obviously, we're assuming everyone's driving. So that's what we put into the mix, into the analysis. You look at the big picture and taking a step back as far as traffic on area roads, Park Avenue at the Old Town Road, we didn't analyze that intersection in this study. We actually analyzed that intersection in a different study that you will see sometime in the future where we have this site traffic in that analysis for that intersection. And if you look at what traffic may be added from this site to to Jefferson Street, the amount of traffic added to Jefferson Street from this development is probably about 5 vehicles, two-way during the peak hours. And the afternoon will be a little bit busier than the morning, so about 5 vehicles. From a traffic perspective, that's not going to change the operational characteristics of Jefferson Street. Again, Jefferson Street does carry some traffic. Yes, it carries some traffic when people get off the Parkway in the afternoon when it's backed up on the Parkway itself. And the volumes that we use in the analyses really account for that because they're the higher volumes. So that's a summary. And, oh, by the way, we did look at accidents, of course, for Park Avenue at the intersections. The data was obtained from, of course, Fairfield Police Department and Trumbull Police Department because Park Avenue is somewhat split down the middle. As you get closer to the Old Town Road intersection, it's split with Fairfield and Bridgeport. But near the site itself is Trumbull and Fairfield, and we included that accident data in the analyses. The data is for a 3-year period. It goes back a little bit in time, but there really were very few accidents on intersections. And quite frankly, with the improvements, the accident rate, if there is any rate, because the numbers were quite low, are likely better because we have improved roadway conditions. That's a summary of the traffic report. I can certainly answer questions now or before 9 o'clock, if you don't mind. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galante. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Galante? Okay. I mean, it looks from the chart I like that you just posted, the increase in percentages anywhere from like 1.7 to around 3, a little over 3%.
It's lower now with the lower number of units.
Right. I mean, I saw the chart. Right.
Yeah.
Not too many years ago, we didn't have, the Yale New Haven up there. Not too many years ago, certain of these other parcels were not developed. You feel that the development over time has been a significant, impact on the community in that part of town there?
Well, first, the volumes that I represented tonight and included in the report include the Bridgeport Hospital, include the Sacred Heart expansion. What we don't take credit for is the dormitory construction where we're taking students off the roads and putting them into dormitories. Not right now, of course, because the world is very different right now. So the analyses include that activity. Would I agree that there's more traffic on Park Avenue with those developments? Of course, absolutely. And it's included in the analyses. That information is in the model.
Right, I realize it's in the model. It's sort of like you've heard it from others in other applications before, where we talk about incremental stress on the right on the environment, and while you say this is an insignificant impact or increase for Yale New Haven, and then it's the addition then of Sacred Heart, and an insignificant impact, and then we have this development, which is again standing alone, is perhaps viewed as an insignificant impact. But when you add those impacts together and look at them holistically, I'm wondering whether we get to a point where we're stressing the environment too much.
Yeah. No, Chairman, can I just add one thing, Mike, before you jump in? Having been involved with a lot of the projects up on there, is you got to remember, I understand, Chairman, your discussion about how the incremental declining, but and that would be appropriate had the private developers not spent millions of dollars to build. That was all built with private money to accommodate that there's no creep from that this isn't the end of a creep. Basically, the private developers built that rotary. They put in a light that wasn't there. So if you're adding traffic to that old, which I wouldn't even consider it a rotary, it was almost like, I don't know, people sped up going through that. I don't even know what it was. It was half a circle. It was just it's almost like the baseline starts in 2015, 2016, once all those road improvements were put in, because that area operated so dangerously for years that if there hadn't been those road improvements, I think even with the additional traffic, that road operates safer now than it ever did before the new hospital building was built and Sacred Heart did all their expansion. Mike, would you kind of...
So does the expert, Mr. Galante, concur with the attorney argument we just heard?
Yes, I do, actually, and he makes a very good point. The added traffic from these developments that have come in before this development that we're discussing tonight came in with significant road improvements, modifications of traffic control, added lanes, the roundabout, the signalization of the parkway ramps. If we were sitting here tonight with a lot of new traffic from other developments, and I don't mean to pick on other developments, with no improvements to the roads, then your statement, Mr. Chairman, would be a very fair statement that these roads are not as they were, let's say, 4 years ago.
I didn't make a statement. I actually asked you a question.
Yeah, well, I'm agreeing that
whether you felt the combination of all of these things was creating a significant impact that at some point placed too much of a stress on the system. And the answer is you don't believe it is because the roadways have been improved in these different ways to accommodate those developments. Okay, so I wasn't arguing. I was asking you a question.
No. I didn't think you were arguing. But the statement is correct that, with the improvements and the additional traffic and the results of my analysis that I presented in the partial table 5, it tells me as a traffic consultant that these intersections and rotary and so on do operate at very acceptable levels of service with reasonable delay. There's no such thing as no delay, and every project adds traffic. We know that, and there's no such thing as no impact. But we're accommodating the traffic that's here on the road with improvements that came in online at that time.
Sure, and I mean, you have to appreciate that it's a fair question to ask, right? And I think important to understand your response and explanation, not only for the commission when in evaluating the proposal, but also for members of the public who are looking at this as, another major development on a very busy road, which has already been the subject of several major developments, and who might be wanting to understand how is it possible the roadway can handle all of these major developments. And I think, your answer is because the roadway has been improved in these various ways to accommodate those developments.
Yeah, and also if I could make one last statement, the road improvements that were put in place were not just to accommodate these developments, the hospital and Sacred Heart expansion, but there's what we call reserve capacity in the system for additional traffic, such as this development. 5 years ago, this development wasn't included in the model that we did for Sacred Heart, for example. Right.
Was this development or type of development, and I recognize it likely not, this particular development, but was development of this parcel in this kind of density taken into account when the improvements to the roadway were being considered, several years ago, to the point where, you could say, indeed, those improvements sort of foresaw and accommodated the development of this parcel in some way.
Yeah, again, we've looked at this parcel for different types of development over the years. I think one was an office, maybe one was medical. Ray, maybe you remember. But back then, we did in the back of our minds include some development on this property. It may not have been 99 units, but I believe one was an office building, actually. And I think one was a medical building. That was included in the background condition for purposes of the traffic study. That was not, it wasn't something that was proposed at the time, but we knew it was out there.
Chairman, if I can add, when we did the development at the hospital, and that was one of the issues, was where was the road? Originally, there was 2 rotaries proposed. There was a rotary where this light was, and one of the topics of discussion was that there was this property across the street from the hospital, and that whether it would be wise to have that property be accessed off a rotary. It wasn't for any either specific project, because I represented before this mission, Chairman, I'm not sure if you're on the board, where we were going to put a surgical center there that didn't work out. And okay, so there was the understanding that something would go there, and that rather than put 2 rotaries there, a rotary and a light would work best. And that's why this project is accessed directly across and at the light.
Again, we did analyze 2 rotaries and different combinations of improvements at the intersections way back when. Absolutely.
Commissioner Brayman?
Thank you. I don't know whether this is a question best addressed to Mr. Galante or for other members of the team, on the design team, but in terms of pedestrian or bicycle access to the site, notice that there is some provision for pathways and sidewalks. I wondered if you could speak to paths for pedestrians or cyclists to take in and out of the proposed development, whether that be to access one or more of the employers in the area or for other reasons.
Well, I could speak for part of that. Certainly along Sacred Heart's property in the School of Business, there was a sidewalk constructed at the time. I was part of that, actually. The widening of the road of Park Avenue itself, with the restriping the 4 lanes and shoulder lines, was in a way the unofficial lane for bicycles. This was before bicycles were really discussed in detail, as they are discussed now in town. So indirectly, there was an accommodation for bicycles on the road itself, and a sidewalk. I don't know if it goes all the way up along the ball fields up to the site frontage, but it certainly goes up along Sacred Heart's property. That was for students or whoever walking down Park Avenue. As you get closer to the university, there's a lot more pedestrian activity. As we know, there's a lot less as you get towards the Parkway ramps. And probably nothing both of the ramps, I would guess.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Galante? Yes, Commissioner Rowe.
So all of the data that's in your report is from 2018, including the accident data, or was that updated through today's date?
No, it was not updated.
Because there's been some growth of development since 2 years ago, right? I don't know the history of.
Well, the development over 2 years, but the accident data is up to a point in time around 2018, no later than 2019 at all.
Okay. Some of the neighbor letters that I've read indicate there's a lot of, does this mention the rotary accidents on the rotary that they put in there, or no? Or does that rotary predate, post-date study period?
I'm sorry, the rotary was new at the time.
Pardon me?
The rotary was new at the time.
So we don't have an accident history at the rotary?
Not
in the rotary, on the rotary, approaching the rotary?
No.
Okay. Because that's what just reading some of the public comments, it seems like they're saying there's a lot of accidents at the rotary.
I don't know, I can certainly check.
Yeah, I think that would be, a good set of data points.
Yeah.
Okay. Update the, accident data, bring forward to date, rotary down the, on and off ramps, intersections, at the site.
Okay.
And there's no, I can't find any mention of, is there no sightline issue at all? I don't think it's mentioned in the report.
No, it's not mentioned. It's a signalized intersection. We have to get approval from Connecticut DOT. They control the intersection, even though it's not a state road, but it's a state intersection, if you will. The sightlines to the south coming out of our new driveway, you can see several hundred feet. I don't know the exact measurement. And coming out of the driveway, looking towards the parkway overpass, you can see pretty much all of the footpath. You see the top of the roundabout. But again, that'll be part of the plans with DOT as far as upgrading the traffic signal. But there's a traffic signal there, so it's a little bit different as far as how we look at it.
So you're saying silence does not apply in terms of a safety issue?
It's not as critical because the driveway is controlled with a traffic signal. You'll be red, have a green light obviously when you exit. Not saying you shouldn't have a sight distance, but that'll be part of any final discussions with DOT, which we have not started.
Okay, thank you.
One more.
Anyone
I have a
else?
question.
Yes,
I have a question.
Commissioner.
You mentioned pedestrian traffic, and I don't know if maybe I missed something, but won't this building bring a lot more of that to the area? Pedestrians walking around and bikes and stuff like that, possibly.
Potentially. Everyone's going to walk from this site. They'd be walking southbound, I would assume, towards Sacred Heart in that direction. I doubt very much a pedestrian would walk out over the parkway onto that part of Park Avenue north of the parkway. It's very narrow as far as there are no sidewalks. Certainly, it's a two-lane road, whereas the section of Park Avenue south of the site is a very different type of road with sidewalks and so on. As far as bicycles, bicycles can be in a travel lane just like a car, so they have the accommodations both north and south of the site itself. Certainly different type of conditions, but they have the right to use that travel lane, as long as they obey the same rules.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Braun?
Just following up on that last question, are there no sidewalks on this area of Park Avenue? Like, how will someone be walking to work, or if they're going to work at the medical building or the university? Do they walk on the road?
Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, there are sidewalks certainly along the School of Business along Sacred Heart's property. I don't know how far up that sidewalk goes towards the site itself. And I believe there might be a crosswalk at the hospital driveway.
I have a Google aerial view. It looks like it ends right at a building that has Einstein Bagels in it. Is that the School of Business? It looks like the sidewalk ends perhaps where the fields begin or before the fields begin.
I'd have to check. I'm working on my phone at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
We'll certainly look into that, but there are sidewalks out there. It's not that there are no sidewalks, but there are certainly no sidewalks north of the parkway.
Yeah. No, that would be, I think that would be challenging for people to be walking.
I wouldn't recommend it, actually. I have no room to do it.
Yeah. Which is what it's a little odd to hearing this be stylized as a TOD, or at least analogized to a TOD, because those are really for dense structures that are adjacent to public transportation, walkability, and so forth, and that's not this. All right. Anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Galante? Seeing none. Very good. Attorney Rizzio, please continue.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'll just quickly talk about the engineering, and then I'll call up John Geddes. Jason Spath is on, I believe, with us also tonight. And if you have any questions with regard to engineering, however, there's a letter that has been sent from Laura Pulley. We are to the town, and it basically dated November 3rd, which she says that she's reviewed the last revised plans, that the plans are now acceptable as presented. The items I asked to be included or revised were recorded in the code enforcement minutes and are now proposed for these current plans. Basically, from an engineering standpoint, we have satisfied wetlands with regard to our drainage. I can have Jason take you really quickly through that. I'm not sure. Laura's already passed, has already reviewed it. We're served by city water. We will be served by the Bridgeport Municipal Sewer System at the request of the town of Fairfield. And I'd be happy to go through any more detailed engineering if the commission would like to hear about our drainage system. One of the good things, as I explained to the neighbors today, is that currently the water, people on Weeping Willow, I've seen in some of their comments, have complained about water. And the issue is there is no drainage system that currently sits on these 2 acres. Now all the water will be collected. It'll be put into a drainage basin. It'll be retained, and then the water will be allowed to permeate naturally and let go, believe it or not, down the hill north toward the parkway where wetlands exist. So any water that was coming off this site that currently naturally flows toward Weeping Willow Road is now going to be contained, detained, and then released in a different in a direction that will not impact the homes at the Weeping Willow. Jason, if you could echo any other.
So why don't you, instead of the brief summary, why don't you walk through the drainage engineering so that those members of the public who have expressed concern about how that is going to operate can see what you're talking about. Okay?
Jason and Mike, if you guys are on, if you could walk the commission and the public through the improvements and the drainage system that has been designed for this site. Thank you, Chairman.
Members of the commission, my name is Mike Pajola.
Mike, do you want me to share that plan, or do you want Chris to share that plan while you speak?
Yes, it's the engineering plan.
Okay.
Our sheet number 2. Yes, no?
I'm on page of the PDF.
Not part of this because we did revisions. This was conservation. It's the same one. Next, yeah, next sheet. Yeah, that's it. So as Attorney Rosio said, the site slopes from east to west, from Park Avenue down towards the back, and there's wetlands on the American Parkway side. What we intend to do, both build a new building and parking lot, is have a series of catch basins. In engineering's review, Laura Poole suggested after some of the catch basins add dry wells to dampen the effect on the proposed drainage basin at the bottom of our hill. So there's a series of catch basins and manholes. They go to dry wells. From there, they go down, and on our northwest corner, there'll be a stormwater cleaner to clean the water and send it into the drainage basin. The drainage basin will be controlled by what's shown on that plan is CS1, controlled structure number 1. I examined the storms that are listed in my drainage report. So for the storms were the 1 year, 2 year, 10, 25, and even the 100-year storm. We dampen the effect of the runoff each storm as the intensity of the storms go up. The level in our drainage basin goes up and it's controlled. The outlet is controlled by that outlet control structure, and it seeps into the Merritt Parkway property, which contains a wetlands. It's again, it was reviewed by Laura Pooley. She came back with comments, and was my opinion and also hers that we satisfied her concerns. One of the main concerns, in my opinion, was behind the retaining wall. She wanted some drains to collect the water, and we put those in that tied into the catch basin system. So each storm is dampened by the effect of this proposed drainage basin.
The controlled structure.
Yes.
Right. Those are catch basin, dry well.
Yes, but the control structure at the end, at the outlet of the pond, is simply a modified. It's a manhole with a catch basin top and a series of pipes. And again, that was reviewed by engineering department and approved.
I understand that.
It meters the water as it's released out of that pond.
Excellent, and I understand that the whole plan has been fully and approved. We're really trying to understand it, and through our review and your explanation, that members of the public can also understand what the plan is and how it's supposed to work. So, does structures, do they require maintenance?
The dry wells will have manhole tops on it, and a yearly maintenance of open the manhole top and just putting a rake down there and pulling out any debris. But there shouldn't be any in, because the catch basins themselves will have sumps. Will have 3-foot sumps. So any most of the sand or whatnot during the winter months will collect in the sumps, and they should be cleaned up once a year. And anything that gets passed through there and down the pipeline system, the stormwater cleaner will be just before it empties into the pond. That stormwater cleaner will clean out any other silts and debris that might get through the system.
Okay, and when you refer to a stormwater cleaner, a device, right?
That's correct. It's state of the art. Most projects we work on, we use this particular one. We use one that's made by Contech. There's several manufacturers, and the specs they meet what the conservation. This plan was reviewed and approved by conservation, so it passed their muster, and we've used this system quite a few times.
Right.
Here in town and other towns.
Right. So you mentioned a couple of points. They may not be terribly burdensome, but there is some work to do on an annual basis to make sure that the system continues to work the way it's designed. Who will be responsible?
The property owner.
Okay. And is that written down?
And you have to remember too, because there is regulated area on this property, it will be reviewed, I'm sure,
on a yearly basis by the Conservation Department. And anything that they see that's not up to their standards would be reported to the property owner. As a matter of fact, Conservation suggested, and we have an easement for them to come down into the property and do inspections.
Right. I appreciate that. You know, the conservation, although they're permitted to do these inspections and so forth, you know, not inspecting every single private property and drainage system to make sure that people are cleaning out the silt from the wells to make sure that the resources to do that. Right. So I'm just trying to understand if the written plan is there will be that's required to keep the system functioning properly. So I think, Mr. Petroli, I think you're on mute.
How about now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thanks.
Okay, on our last sheet, on our sheet 5 of 5, there is a note about a maintenance plan, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What?
But again, it's there for the property owner.
I see that now on sheet 4 of 5.
5 of 5.
5 of 5. I see on sheet 4 of 5. Yeah, that's and on 5 of 5.
The last sheet, our last sheet.
Yeah. Where on the sheet? Oh, maintenance plan.
That's it.
Yeah, so all stormwater shall be inspected. Weekly inspection of the site should be conducted for surface debris.
We put monthly. Most cases it's twice a year, but monthly inspection. It's again with the deep sumps in the catch basin. I'd be surprised if every month that the catch basins had to be cleaned up.
Sure. Well, at least an inspection. You take action when you see action that's necessary. But
that's correct.
Inspect them monthly to make sure there's no action necessary. I appreciate. All right. So the outline plan 5 of 5 to be a requirement that the owner has to.
Yes, you were breaking up. I don't know if I heard everything you said.
Just simply that the maintenance plan here that you're requiring is to be the obligation of the owner, property management companies that's running the.
That's correct. And the owner just usually hires a maintenance company to take care of most everything involved in the building.
Okay, very good. Any other commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Braun.
Can you clarify, I'm just reading through the materials, this project was reduced from 99 units to 80 units at some point. Do all these plans reflect the smaller number of units, or are they still showing the bigger number of units? I'm trying to figure out the dimensions of the project. Like, is it still 134,000 square feet footprint, or is it less than that?
Yeah, this is Ray Rizzio. The plans on footprints and everything else match up. The change in the units were interior drafting, and Mr. Geddes, who I'll have up next, who was the architect, will take you through that.
So the 134,000 square foot footprint did not go down when you reduced it to 80 units from 99 units?
I'll Mr. Geddes address all that for you.
Okay. And does it still have two below grade parking lots?
Yes, there's an upper and a lower parking garage that he'll take you through.
And those go down how deep into?
They're basically built into the grade of the property is a steep sloping property. So what's interesting that he's built up is as the property slopes down away from Park Avenue, there is a upper garage that would be almost on the grade, and then the building goes down another level, and he'll be able to take you through that as he takes you through the plans. That the building steps down with the grades of the property, but in doing that, he manages to keep roughly in the middle part of the building, you'll see a parking. There's an upper parking garage, and then in the lower part, there's an additional garage. So there's 4 floors of living area above a garage. And I'll have Mr. Geddes take you through that.
There's a 5th floor also, right?
What's that?
I thought I saw there's a 5th floor as well.
No. They label something a 5th floor, but there are only 4 floors above a garage. 4 floors of living area, but as you can see, the building steps down. So as you can see at each.
Okay, yeah. What's the height of the building above the grade then?
47 feet.
Okay. The grade of the property itself looks like it drops from around 300 to around 260, which is towards like Weeping Willow. So it looks like the natural grade goes down like 30 feet or so from Park Avenue towards the west end of the property. This doesn't change that much, right? I mean, it doesn't. It looks like the new grades don't change it all that much.
You slope down a good 15 feet in the first section of the building, and probably another 15 feet in the next as you go through the second section of the building. But I could have Mr. Geddes address that with you.
Okay, and then I'm sort of focusing on drainage though, and how this impacts the drainage, because I know you have a big detention basin and everything, but I still worry about it because it's significant impervious surfaces you're adding, and you're digging so deep into the hill or whatever you're digging into. How do we know that that's not affecting subsurface waters somehow that could go out the other end? Did anyone do like an underground geologic survey of where the groundwater is and any rocks that could be under there? How do we know what's underneath there?
I'll let Mr. Berturli answer that question.
And is there a drainage study, a report? Because in the wetlands permit, it says that's one of the conditions of approval. Has that been done by now?
There's a drainage report that's been submitted, reviewed, and approved by Laura Pulley, your town engineer.
Can we get a copy of the drainage report? I don't think it's in here, in my package anyway.
I think it's in the packet.
Is it usually like 50 pages long, full of numbers and things like that? I don't see it anyway.
We have it in the record. It's not been distributed to the commission, but I can certainly do that.
Okay. And there's some mention of a retaining wall that goes as high as 18 feet. Where is the retaining wall, and what is the purpose of that? Is that to keep water or earth out or erosion, or is that to keep deer off the property? What is it for? 18 feet.
Certainly keep deer off the property.
Retaining wall.
I'll let Mr. Geddes take you through it in his design.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Berturli?
Not at the moment, thanks.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Berturli. Attorney Rizzio?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Geddes to get on to jump on. He'll take you through the architectural plans and answer most of the questions that the commission will have as to how his design, how he worked out the design, one of the issues we did talk about with the fire marshal, who, as you know, is also signed off on the plan, is that they wanted circulation around the building, which we have provided. But John, if you could take the commission through your architecturals, your floor plans, and John, for the record, is a very significant developer, has redeveloped the entire riverfront in Shelton, and he is an expert at these challenging properties and coming out with quality projects. So John, I'm going to turn this over to you at this point.
Mr. Geddes might be on mute.
He's not, he's unmuted, but I think he's on the phone. He might be trying to call into the phone.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, for the record, I'm John Geddes. I'm a principal at Geddes Associates, the architectural firm. I'm also manager of Primrose Development, the applicant. This project has been in the works for a number of years. There has been a number of different designs for it. When the question was asked regarding the square footage of the buildings, even though unfortunately, the scale on the drawings is very small, and I wasn't able to get on my computer. I'm using an iPad, so it makes it even worse. But there were, as I stated, there were a number of designs. The initial program dealt with utilizing an approval that had previously been granted for an office building. So the plan of development was to take the improved areas that had been previously approved, which included all of the drainage systems and drainage ponds and grading and so forth, utilizing all of that to be able to accommodate the building that I had envisioned. The building that I had envisioned, as stated, there were 99 units. There was also a larger footprint. That all changed after we met with in the TAC review, where the fire marshal required or requested that I find a way to have the emergency vehicles actually enter the site and be able to access both sides of the building and be able to exit out. So I went back and redesigned the building in a fashion that would allow for that to happen. In working with the grades, as again stated, there is a 30-something foot drop in the natural grade of the site. The retaining wall that was brought up, that retaining wall is the same retaining wall that had come before the commission in the previous application for the office building. That retaining wall is basically 18 foot because it basically goes to the bottom of the drainage pond or the retention pond. So at that location, it's 18 foot. It's not 18 foot in other areas. When we're talking about excavation of the site, what I did with this design was to basically work with the topography that we had. So as the building was designed, we have an area in the front which basically is set up for visitors parking, and at the main entrance to the building, and again working with the grades. Below that, we have a partial basement, which is I envision accommodating a conference room or a meeting room, a exercise room,
and self-storage, a self-storage facility to provide for cages, for the various apartments. And as the driveway on both sides heads west with the grade, they enter the first parking level, which is at the same level as the rear building floor or residential floor. Again, we're working with the topography as we keep on going, and I believe that we have the next garage level, the lower garage level, which may be in the upper. There we go. So as we go down, we're entering again the garage level at the end of the building. So we're not really excavating out. We're working. This design calls for working with the grades. There's only one continuous retaining wall. That again, it's the same retaining wall that was in the previous application or project, and that's on the north side between the Merritt Parkway and the site. And that again is the retaining wall is just basically to allow for a constant grade for the parking heading from east to west. So basically, we have the two levels of parking, and then we have the upper floors of residential units made up of 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. Now, when I initially began my analysis of the site and the type of project that I envisioned developing, it was never my intent or desire to go after student housing. It was not the type of project that I wanted to do. As a matter of fact, I met with the head of housing for Sacred Heart. At the time, Sacred Heart had just acquired the property from the Jewish Home, and had also acquired the GE property, and they were basically in the process of putting together, I believe it was at the time, 2,800 units of student housing. And my purpose for meeting with him was basically just to let him know that I was envisioning putting a development here at this site for upscale residential to accommodate, so-called workforce housing, but what I envisioned was housing to accommodate the professors or other staff of the university, and also businesses like the Bridgeport Hospital, Yale Medical Center, and so forth. So I had never given any thought to student housing. It's not part of the design. It was never part of the thought process through the various designs that took place. Again, it was, I saw this as an ideal site because of its location for, many, not only from the work, the staff at the university and other businesses, but also individuals that go to New York for their jobs, even though obviously now with COVID, everybody's staying home. But I didn't see it as student housing. So the type of units that I envisioned was, basically 1 and 2 bedroom units, and it was again for, business professionals, young couples, empty nesters, and that type of, that type of tenant. The building has been set up, as Attorney Rizzio indicated, as 2 pods. And again, it just worked out ideally because of the grade that I have to work with. We do have, an elevator at the main entrance, and then in the middle of the 2 buildings, another elevator, and also that elevator goes up to a rooftop observation deck or recreational deck. And adjacent to the elevator, and again, I know that we've gone through this discussion on other projects, and the question is always raised, where's the trash containers? And again, as previously, in previous hearings, we've had the same discussions, and every one of the buildings that we design of this type, we're introducing the trash chutes with the trash compactors at the base level. And again, it's for accommodation of people not having to go outdoors, especially during the winter. And over the years, I always had an issue with trash containers and the issue of maintenance. I know that there was a discussion that just took place regarding the basin and the catch basins and maintenance and so forth. Yes, these buildings all wind up being turned over to a management company that is responsible for all of the maintenance factors of the exterior and interior of the buildings. It's part of their responsibility. But one of the things that I always disliked and always thought was terrible was the fact that trash containers, no matter how, or the trash container enclosures, no matter how much people try to maintain them, it's left up to the trash haulers that come in and all of a sudden hit the fences, and it's always so we've gotten away from that. And I, as I said, I know that we've had various discussions about it, but we're going into this, and we specified state-of-the-art equipment, and again, it's a convenience, like all the other amenities that you try to provide with these type of facilities, for these buildings. The design of the building, and again, I went through various designs, given different shapes because of how this was approached. And the final design of it, I decided to go with a contemporary building, and the main reason was because of its setting and the facilities, around it, and the fact that you were by the university, and again, the style of it just the site lended itself for this type of style. The exterior facade, I've introduced brick and panelized siding, which is aluminum siding with glass, and so the balconies are glass and aluminum. So it's a contemporary design, but again, as I stated, all the features that are required for these type of buildings have been introduced into the building. The building was designed to accommodate a certain type of tenant, and again, I want to emphasize it was never in my thought process that student housing would be part of the program. None of the units that have been designed lend themselves to that. If there are any questions, I'd be more than glad to respond to them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Getz. Does anyone have any other questions? Any questions? I can't see hands, so please let me know.
Commissioner Bremen, Mr. Getz, you just talk about how you envision people entering and exiting the complex other than by car. If there's any pathways that you had envisioned where it would be likely that people would, traverse the neighborhood either on foot or by bicycle.
Well, we've given thought to that. If you look at the site plan, there are, interior sidewalks that lead up to the road. Most of these facilities, even though on this one here, I don't know if I picked up on it, but all of the facilities that we've been designing, we've been including bicycle racks as part of the items that are being introduced into the garage areas, along with the electric charging stations for the electric cars. I have not looked at the site itself, but you're correct. I did envision that because of the fact that you're at the university, that you are going to have, there will be access from this building to, for the walking. I mean, you're in the university setting. You have, features within the university that in many cases you may have, tenants that are, working at the university that will be, walking or riding their bicycle. So yes, I did envision that, and we just haven't looked at that situation as to what will take to connect our building to the end of the sidewalks, by the new fields that have been built. I believe that the sidewalks do end by the fields. So it would be, and again, as part of the overall plan, extending those sidewalks is not, is a minor expense to provide an amenity for the building.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone?
Commissioner Francis?
Yep, Commissioner Braun, then Commissioner Francis.
So can you, I might have missed it in your discourse, but the 134,000 square feet footprint, that did not change when you reduced the number of feet, or did that change when you reduced the number of feet, the number of units rather?
Commissioner, I believe that was associated with, the design before we met with the fire marshal. I believe that we're now dealing with 100,000 square feet. I don't have the plan, I'm at home, so I don't have the plans here and the scale on it, but I believe it's in one of the drawings, it states the square footage, and I believe it's a little over 100,000 square feet.
And do you know the location of the retaining wall? It's only on the north, the whole length of the north side of the structure of the parking lot?
Yeah, there's a low retaining wall that goes alongside the Merritt Parkway.
I'm talking about the one that goes like 18 feet tall. You said that was
a small section at the rear of the property before the basin. And the 18 foot, it has to do with the basin itself. It's to the bottom of the basin. So if you look at the basin, I believe is 10 or 12 foot. So it appears to be larger, but that's only at the basin.
Is the basin totally walled off?
No, it's just a portion between the parking lot and the basin.
So the basin is open aside from one side of it, the north side of it?
And again, it has to do with holding back the parking lot. And Commissioner, keep in mind that this is not a new design. This was the same basin, the same wall that the commission approved for an office building some years back.
That doesn't, I wasn't here, so
I apologize. But no, what I'm suggesting is that the wall is basically on just one section. It's at the end of the property. And when we're talking 18 foot high, it's because of the depth of the basin. So it just follows one side of the basin.
And the purpose is to hold back the earth outside the basin so it doesn't fall in?
No, it's the parking lot.
And how much does the development activity stop where that wall is? And then it's just open space from there to the Merritt Parkway, or is there anything else on the rest of, how much distance is there from the edge of the development activity to where the Merritt Parkway is?
I would,
or the edge of the property, let's say.
Well, I think we're looking at two different things. One wall is between the property and the Merritt Parkway, so that's on the north side. Where you're referring to an 18-foot wall, that's on the west side. And
there, you have the wall and then you have the basin along with open space.
Okay, so, because in the wetlands permit, it said that they wanted you to have weeping holes or whatever at the bottom of that retaining wall, so the water that naturally drains out will go towards the wetlands, which are along the Merritt Parkway. It looks like I see wetlands all along the whole length of the property on the north of the property near the Merritt Parkway. Is that what you're trying to say?
There's a low wall, it's not very high, but what they were referring to was just basically there's natural seepage in soils, and what they wanted was the natural seepage to go into the wetland areas.
And is that wetland that long skinny thing that shows up sort of between development and the Merritt Parkway on the drawing? It's like a long sort of skinny thing that looks like it might have wetlands.
The only wetlands, there are no wetlands on the property. What they were referring to was basically having flow, natural seepage.
I understand that.
Into the basin.
Is that
is that wetland that this water is flowing towards on this side of the parkway or the other side of the parkway?
This side of the parkway.
Okay. And how much of a greenway are you preserving on your property? The wetlands are off-site, but your property, are you developing right up to the edge of your property, or how much are you leaving natural for wildlife transport? It looks like this is part of an established greenway that goes up and down the Merritt Parkway. Are you leaving, how much horizontal distance are you leaving in its natural state for wildlife?
I don't believe I believe there's only about 10 feet. But again, we're probably 50 feet away from the Merritt. Or at least 50 feet.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole area on the western boundary at the rear of the parking lot is all going to be remaining natural.
Except, so my concern is the wildlife sort of corridor, that goes up and down the Merritt Parkway. Is that only 10 feet preserved, or is there's more on the...
There's probably 50 to 100 feet from our property of buffered area before you get to the Merritt.
Okay.
And our property abuts up on the south. Our property abuts up to the fields.
Okay. And one last question. If that drainage basin does overflow, let's say we have a really bad storm, where does that water go? Are there swales which directed towards? Did you mention that?
It's all directed toward the off-site wetlands.
So even the ones down by the drainage basin, that would be directed up towards the Merritt Parkway?
Well, it's not up, it'll be down. The Merritt Parkway sits below our property.
But by up, I meant north. It will not be directed west. There's some kind of a swale that you're putting in there to make it.
It's directed north, and which proceeds directly downhill to the Merritt.
And that retention wall, though, would block it, wouldn't it? The retention wall is right there on the north end of that detention basin area, isn't it? The 18 foot.
No, the retention wall stops with the parking lot is.
Oh, okay. So there's no retention wall where the basin is at all. Okay. I thought he said the 18 foot was down by the basin, but okay. Thank you. Can I do one last question?
Sure.
Did anyone do a wildlife survey of the property to see what is using this property? Because it sure looks from an aerial view like it is part of an existing sort of greenway that goes up and down most of the Merritt Parkway. Do we know what's using this site now and how it could be impacted?
Not really. Just so you know, the property, there was a house there for years. And part of a previous contract was a demolition of the house that was basically falling down. And so that was always a single family residence for years. So, but we have not done a wildlife study.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Corcoran.
Hi, I'm talking about, I'm interested in the aesthetics from the Merritt Parkway. Is there a landscaping plan that we have? I don't remember seeing one.
Well, the landscaping plan for the Merritt Parkway, it's all natural woods all the way from the side of this property all the way down to the Merritt.
How much higher than the Merritt is the property?
If Mike Bertolo and Jason are on, maybe they can give you that answer, but it's significantly higher.
Okay. And is it wooded?
Yes, wooded all the way. If you take a look, there's an but we'll just show you an overhead picture.
Let me see if
I know the property's wooded. I'm wondering about how much of the wood will be left after the building's there.
But it's really more overgrown. So if you can see.
you're gonna give me some time.
Oh, Chris is going to try and bring up an aerial shot of it for you.
So do we have a landscaping plan?
Yes, it was done by, but it should be part of the submission.
Yeah, I don't see it in the packet that we got.
Ray, this is Jason Spath. As you're pulling up that overhead, there is about, just for the commission's knowledge record, 150 feet of woods between our property line and the pavement. So that greenway will stay as it exists. It's on state property. That answers, and you'll see the picture he has.
Do you anticipate that the building will be visible from the parkway?
I would imagine there's portions of it will be, especially in the winter.
You don't really, I got to tell you, you don't really see much of the medical building across the street, and that's probably, that's a lot closer to the highway. Okay. As you can see, if you have this, look at this now. If you see the overhead, that's the medical building right on the entranceway, and I think is maybe 30 or 40 feet.
Well, that's 30 or 40 feet from the entrance ramp.
Right, and I don't even think you see it from the Merritt. This property is going to be directly across the entrance. I don't know. I certainly didn't see the house that was ever there, and I don't know that you see any of the homes on Weeping Willow from the Merritt either. I'm not sure.
Well, I'd like to see a landscaping plan when you can.
Sure.
To us.
Can you share the color vision?
Yeah, I can share that with you.
I'll also show you, Commissioner Corcoran, since you asked about aesthetics, we do have a color rendering that I'll have Chris Russo bring up right now.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that.
Hold on 1 second. There it is. Okay.
That's the color rendering of the building.
Okay. All right, I'll just wait to see the landscaping plan. I'm good.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Getz? Okay.
Commissioner Francis?
Oh, Commissioner Francis, go ahead.
Is there any type of tenant contract? I remember when Oak Grove was developed and people were concerned about recent college graduates being tenants, and the developer was very firm in the type of behavior he was going to allow. It sounded like there were going to be a lot of rules. Are you having anything like that?
Yes, there will be, all apartments will have a minimum one-year lease program with occupants required, full 12 months. But it'll be the same type of lease that we have in the other buildings that we own. For the most part, it limits, smoke-free building, pets that are 10 pounds or less, all the typical, again, this is catering to people that don't want the nuisance. So, you can't have both. If
You either have a building that's catered to young people that, you know, are gonna party till all times of night.
Late night music, right?
Right, you know, people work and many, you know, people, if they haven't, you know, if they're working during the day, they need their rest and they don't wanna be bothered, so. You know, not that there's somebody's not gonna be a nuisance, but for the most part, we try to avoid that. This is not, it's not designed to cater to that. So to answer your question, yes, there's, you know, lengthy, as a matter of fact, it's, the template was prepared by Attorney Rizzio's office.
All right. Yeah, because people were concerned about the late night music by, you know, kids a year or two out of college who still haven't quite matured as the rest of the tenants probably have. All right, that sounds like you covered it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Getz. Attorney Rizzio, what about,
Chairman, I think probably at this point, I would wrap up and reserve, final comments for rebuttal and additional submittals, which I think would, I'm assuming this, we're gonna continue this hearing and we will investigate additional sidewalks. Commissioner Corcoran will provide a, detailed landscape plan. We'll update the current accident report, and as I committed to the neighbors directly to the west, Uring and Carew at 335 Willing, we will work with them over the next, before the next hearing to develop hopefully a buffering and planting plan that they're comfortable with.
okay.
And then I'll summarize and complete my presentation upon rebuttal. I don't think you need to hear me repeat myself again. So.
No, I certainly don't. If you're finished with your presentation, you can end on that, and I can hold it open now for public comment. I do understand your request to continue the hearing until our next meeting so that you can provide this additional information and do your rebuttal then. So I'll say to members of the public, I'll hold it open for public comment as well. So you're welcome to take the mic and give us your comments tonight, or if you'd prefer, you can provide your public comments at the next meeting on December 8th. So with that, Ms. Harrigan, do we have, I think I saw a few folks that signed up previously. We can call them and see if they want to speak tonight.
We have two people signed up. Bethel Rooney is first, and then second is Marshall Weiss.
Okay, so Ms. Rooney. I see your name, no video. I do see you're on mute. So if you'd like to let us know if you'd like to speak tonight, that would be good. Okay. Mr. Weiss?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
there she is.
Unfortunately, I cannot see anything now, but on my screen, it's total blank. But if you can hear me, I could give some comments.
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
This has been quite an experience. Let me say first, I did send an email to the, I hope it went through. It probably would have been around 6 o'clock tonight. And I hope you have received. Also, I could not quite understand this so completely, and I don't know if there have been some changes to his request. From what I ran off everything that I could website, Sunday night, so I am essentially from that material. And if there's some changes, I don't know what they are, but probably won't make much.
I'm sorry, Ms. Rooney, can you please hold your phone closer to your mouth?
Okay, are you getting an echo possibly?
We are.
You have to turn off your computer audio and just talk through your phone.
Well, I can't do anything on my computer because, it's just blank now. I will move into another room. That might do it.
Okay. Or you could just take it off speaker and speak into the phone directly.
All right, her computer appears to be working after the video.
I'm not too computer literate, so, Tom, would you turn on this other light? Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. We can hear you very clearly now.
Okay. All right, I've spent quite a bit of time going over, the applicant's requests, which are sweeping, to say the least. As I understand it, the applicant is requesting major and sweeping changes to the zoning regulations applicable to the design resident district. And the proposed changes are specifically targeted to the 2.4 acre lot at 5545 Park Avenue, which is currently zoned R3. It's also asking for a zone change for this lot from R3 residence to design residence district and a special permit to construct an 80-unit, 5-story housing development in one building. If approved, the applicant's proposal would be highly detrimental to the Stratfield area and to the town. The town's current regulations would not allow the requested zone change to design residence district. Section 10.6.3 of the zoning regulations say that to change property in an R3 residence area to design residence district, you must have a minimum of 5 acres. The applicant only has 2.4 acres. Not only does the applicant want this commission to discard the current minimum lot size of 5 acres and change it to 2 acres, it also wants you to increase the allowable density from 3.2 housing units per acre to 50 housing units per acre, with an overall maximum of 90 housing units. The applicant therefore wants you to increase the current maximum density from 7 or possibly 8 units for a 2.4 acre to 90 units, a more than 11-fold increase. Excuse me, let's flip pages here. The applicant also wants this commission to increase the allowable height of buildings and to eliminate any restriction on the number of stories. Section 10.11 of the current regulations states, no building or other structure shall exceed a height of 3 stories or 40 feet, whichever is less. The applicant requests a new maximum height of 50 feet with no limit on the number of stories. The applicant also wants you to vastly increase the number of housing units that can be put into one building. Section 10.9.1, the current regulation states, there shall be no more than 4 dwelling units in any single building, and each dwelling unit shall have an entrance providing direct access to the exterior, which access shall not be shared in common with any other unit. This regulation governs all design residence districts when the underlying district is AAA, AA, A, R3, or R2. and generally when the underlying district is B or C2. However, the applicant wants to cram all 80 of the proposed housing units into one huge building with no unit having an entrance with direct access to the exterior. Instead, the very limited number of access ways would be shared by many housing units. The current regulations contemplate relatively small, low-rise buildings with no more than 4 housing units each for nearly all design residence districts, and certainly for those where the underlying district is R3. The applicant wants you to disregard that concept entirely for this one small lot. The applicant also wants a great increase in the allowable footprint and bulk of buildings if this lot should be rezoned design residence district. The applicable parts of section 10.12 state the aggregate lot coverage of all buildings and other structures on any lot shall not exceed 20% of the area of the lot, and the total floor area of all and the total floor area of all buildings and other structures on any lot shall not exceed 50% of the area of the lot. Here you are being requested to amend this regulation to allow a building structure coverage or footprint of 50% of the area of the parcel and a total floor coverage of 100% of the area of the lot. The changes that the applicant requests would allow more than 100% increase in the footprint of buildings and structures and twice the bulk of floor coverage of such building or structures. Further, they are asking you to change the existing regulations for parking spaces. Section 28.6.1 of the current regulations require 3 parking spaces for each family in properties with dwelling units of 11 or more, and at least 1/2 a space for each unit. For an 80-unit complex, the current regulation would require 240 parking spaces for residents and an additional 40 spaces for visitors. However, the applicant is asking this commission to reduce the parking space requirements for this 2.4-acre parcel at the north end of Park Avenue to just 1.5 parking spaces per housing unit for the residents, plus 1/10 of a parking space per unit for visitors. The amendment the applicant proposes would require a total of only 128 parking spaces total. This in a development with 110 designated bedrooms and 43 dens, which could also be used as bedrooms. The applicant's proposed amendments would gut the current regulations for this 2.4-acre lot with respect to minimum acreage, maximum density, maximum height, maximum footprint and bulk, maximum units in one building, and minimum parking spaces. The applicant is asking this commission to ignore Fairfield's comprehensive plan, which is revealed in the current regulations for R3 residence zones and design residence districts created within R3 zones. It is asking you to ignore the character of the surrounding residential area, to ignore the heavy traffic, to ignore the clear danger of many cars entering and leaving this lot to travel on Park Avenue, and to ignore the guidance of the town plan of conservation and development adopted in November 2016. That town plan of conservation and development states in section Roman numeral 2.3.2, dealing with the Stratfield area, some institutional uses have developed in the Jefferson Street area. The General Electric corporate headquarters, convalescent facilities, high school, university, and Fairfield Wheeler Golf Course are naturally bounded, which should prevent overexpansion of these uses. Any future development of this area should be sensitive to the residential uses within this neighborhood, with preference given to residential development and for the golf course open space. When this plan refers to residential development, it is clearly referring to the low-density residential use already in existence in this area. Bolstering this interpretation is another paragraph in the plan, which states, as nearly a third of the area identified as Stratfield is used for recreational purposes and/or open space, the character of this area and the town in general would be altered dramatically if the Fairfield Wheeler Golf Course or Brooklawn Country Club properties were to be developed for other uses. Maintenance of their current uses should be encouraged. If their current use cannot be continued, they should be preserved for open space. Strategies to consider include recommending town acquisition of these properties or modification of the underlying R3 zoning to decrease permissible density. This document indicates that a decrease in density may be advisable and clearly urges the retention of open areas and low-density residential development in the Stratfield area. The applicant's proposal for major and sweeping amendments to the zoning regulations and a zone change for this 2.4 acre lot is actually a request for spot zoning for this parcel. Spot zoning is not legally permissible, but that is what the applicant is seeking. It wants this commission to enact a new set of zoning regulations would apply only to this one small lot. If the applicant succeeds in getting the proposed amendments to the design resident district zoning regulations and also succeeds in having the zoning for this small lot changed from R3 residence to design residence district, it then wants a special permit to allow it to construct a massive 5-story building with 80 residential units and 158 parking spaces. The complex will contain 110 rooms specifically designated as bedrooms and 43 other rooms designated as dens, which could be used as additional bedrooms. Therefore, there is a potential for as many as 150 bedrooms in this proposed development. We can anticipate that far more than 160 people, quite possibly in excess of 200 persons, would live in this huge building. We don't know who these people would be. There is no reason to assume that many of them will work at Sacred Heart or the Yale New Haven Medical Facility in Trumbull. Doctors, administrators, and teaching personnel generally live in more spacious and upscale accommodations. Elderly persons are not likely to be attracted to such a huge development on a sloping lot with so little green space. Working people of various ages and students are possible tenants. It's possible also that, I suppose, that nursing and medical technicians might consider living in this development as well. I don't know why the applicant assumes that all of these people would not have children. It seems likely that some of the people that might want to live here would have children. Certainly most, if not all, of the adults who might live in such a complex will be driving cars to work, to school, to shopping, to appointments of various types, and to recreational and other activities. The applicant suggests that many people will take the infrequent bus or walk or bicycle to work, school, shopping, and other activities. But we all know that the vast majority of them will drive virtually everywhere, as almost everyone else in the Stratfield area does. Even those going to Sacred Heart are likely to drive, as it is a long, steep walk and a dangerous bike ride on Park Avenue to the university. Moreover, most of the tenants will be driving to work or school during the morning and afternoon peak commuter hours, significantly adding to the already heavy traffic in this area. It's hard to believe how 80 housing units with at least 160 residents, and probably far more, would produce only 29 vehicle trips during the peak morning commuting period and only 36 such trips during the peak afternoon commuting period. Even those numbers are far too many. This is not a development for the elderly. Obviously, there will be far more vehicle trips to and from this development during the commuting hours. The proposed building would add tremendously to the already heavy traffic on Park Avenue, Jefferson Street, Eastern Turnpike, and as well as the Merritt Parkway. Entering and exiting this lot will be dangerous to its residents and to those traveling on Park Avenue. It has a steep incline up to Park Avenue and down to the western end of the property. It is very close to the roundabout on Park Avenue. Construction of this proposed building is inviting accidents. The applicant concedes that this area is one of the most heavily trafficked in Fairfield. Nevertheless, it claims that the proximity of the proposed housing development to the Merritt Parkway will reduce traffic on Fairfield streets. This claim contradicts common sense. How can the addition of 80 housing units reduce traffic? Some residents may use the Merritt Parkway for some purposes, but they will use Park Avenue and neighboring streets for many others. A majority of the residents will primarily use Fairfield roads to go wherever they want to go. One thing is clear, this project will significantly increase traffic on Fairfield streets as well as on the Merritt Parkway. Somewhere in the applicant's papers, and this may have been a mistake, but it claims that the proposed development will provide housing near the Fairfield Train Center and Fairfield Center and promote walkability to downtown Fairfield. Simple geography says otherwise. The proposed building will not be close to any train station or to Fairfield Center or even to the Black Rock Turnpike shopping area. The proposed development, if built, will hurt the property values of nearby residential areas in Stratfield. Its density, height, mass, and lack of green space are not consistent with the residential and other uses in this area of Fairfield, including nonprofit schools, convalescent facility, and the golf course, all of which are permissible uses in residential areas. The Yale New Haven Medical Facility is not in Fairfield. It is not part of the Fairfield Comprehensive Plan. This part of Stratfield is a low-density residential area. It should be noted that several proposals for considerably smaller buildings for this same lot have been denied by the Fairfield zoning boards in recent years. For all of the foregoing reasons, my husband and I urge this commission to deny the applicant's proposal to amend the zoning regulations, its request for a zone change from R3 residence to design residence district, and its application for a special permit to construct a building with 80 housing units and 158 parking spaces. I'd just like to comment on a couple of things that also were said by Mr. Rizzo or others during the hearing. I believe it was Mr. Rizzo who referred to this property as being on the outskirts of town, outskirts of Fairfield. And therein may lie the real problem. It's true that Trumbull and North Bridgeport are nearby, but it is Fairfield. I doubt that Greenfield Hill areas that abut Easton, and of course we abut Easton also, but I doubt that Greenfield Hill areas or Southport abutting Westport, I doubt that properties in those areas would be described as being on the outskirts of town. This is not Commerce Drive here. It's not downtown Fairfield. We should not have such a dense property or use in our area. This is low density area. Mr. Rizzo also said that this property was not suitable for residential use. I disagree. It may not be the most desirable property, but a residential use of it that isn't a high-rise, high-density apartment certainly could be put onto this property. You probably could get 4 or 5 single-family homes. You might need a variance or 2, minor ones to do it, but it would be doable, and it would almost certainly be acceptable to people in this area. In addition, if with, of course, a variance would be needed, it's possible that a small condominium type could be put on this property if it was used to design residence with a variance, suitable for maybe 7, 8, possibly a couple more units in small buildings. That I would see as a possibility. There are certainly people who would give their eye teeth to live in Fairfield, including on this property, and have access to the services of Fairfield and the amenities of Fairfield. It can be used for a low-density residential use. Just take a check to see if there's any. Also, again, I would see very possibly students, undergraduate and graduate, being interested in living in this building. Additionally, certainly working people of various ages. Why the applicant would assume that these people would not have children going to the Fairfield schools, I don't know. I would assume that most of the working people, at least a good number of them, would have children. And so that would have to be a consideration for this area. Okay, with that, I think I'll conclude my remarks. I urge you to deny this application. And I believe my husband, if he is, I don't know if you can't probably see him anyway, but my husband is Thomas Rooney, and he joins me in.
I agree with it all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rooney and Mr. Rooney. We really appreciate your detailed comment.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing, I'm sorry to interrupt. There was reference to an email that she said she sent earlier this evening. I did not receive that in the commission's inbox nor mine. And so if you can resend that, Beth, and confirm on Thursday. Our office is closed tomorrow, but confirm on Thursday. You can give me a call. We can confirm that we have it in the inbox to distribute to the commission. But I just want to confirm that we did not get what you sent this evening.
Okay, I certainly will resend it. It was sent around 6 o'clock.
Okay. I don't have it, but again, give me a shout on Thursday, and I can make sure you've got the right email address so we can get it distributed to the commission.
Right. Okay. And we're now a little bit past our curfew. We're not through public comment. I will adjourn the meeting, and I'll keep the public comment portion of our public hearing here open. So next meeting, when we start, any members of the public that want to be heard can continue to provide comments. Then we'll go to the applicant's rebuttal, following which we'll close the public hearing on these items. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Wood, Harrigan?
No, sir.
All good? Very good. I will adjourn the meeting.
We may need a lighting report. In addition to the landscape report, we may need a lighting report.
Lighting plan?
I don't think one was in the package that I got.
I agree. I didn't see a lighting plan either.
Okay. All right. Good meeting.